joining us, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I have been that weekend. I took my 15-year-old to Berkshire's. We went to Williamson Town. We checked out Williams College. We checked out the park in Van. We had a basketball fan, and we went to Tanglewood, both on Wood.
There you
And then we stopped on the way. We had. Good.
That's pretty impressive for a Texan.
What? I told you I'm a really cool Texan. I belong up there. I just can't get rid of the accent.
I think she thought Tanglewood with the stuff kind of,
I'm not reading anymore or listening to anything else to say me.
The bottom is fairly adaptable to anything.
It was really.
The planning board is hosting a meeting, a workshop tonight on talking with the fire department on items the department typically reviews in development applications. But before we get to the gentlemen who have come here to speak with us, Doreen, would you please call the roll?
Richard Hendrickson.
Here.
Roger Beely.
Here.
Glenn King.
Here. Here. Here.
Thank you. And please rise for the pledge of, say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This workshop will go until about 6:25, when we then take a 5-minute break and then reconvene to begin the planning board meeting. So saying that, I would appreciate it if the folks who are here tonight from the fire department, if you would approach the podium, state your names and your rank in the fire department. Then we're just going to ask you to talk to us about kind of what you do, because we see reference to the work that you've done coming to us in various developments, and it's very helpful for us to understand all that goes in back of those recommendations that come to us.
Well, good evening. Thank you. Thank you for having us. My name is Rich Kindle and I'm the town's fire chief. I've been in this position for about 18 months. I took over for Chief Thurlow, who many of you I'm sure know, and spent many years in this community, serving for over 47 years. And so I have big shoes to fill. I don't have a whole lot to say about the entire process because I do have a very competent deputy chief that runs the Fire Prevention Bureau. And some of you that may have been in this position for a period of time may have remembered when Jim Butler, Captain Butler, was in that position before he moved on to other things. Deputy Chief John Brennan took over the Fire Prevention Bureau. And we've made some adjustments and some changes to the way we've done some business. But one thing I can say, being here for about 5 years as the chief's deputy as well, was we have some really great collaboration and relationships with not only the staff, but also the boards and commissions that are in the town of Scarborough. And I think that sets us apart and gives us a little bit of an advantage to make sure that our processes are smooth, the communication is open, and we do take fire prevention and planning, and those types of items very seriously. And we have a few things that we want to talk about tonight about workflow and what we're doing, just to kind of bring you all up to speed. But also we wanted to share just a couple of areas of concern that we're watching out for as the town grows, just for you all to have just some bugs in your ear, just to know what we're thinking about. There's a lot going on in this community, as we all know, and there's a lot of things that need to be adjusted and here and there. And that's what we're hoping to do with the information that we gather together. So I'm going to give Deputy Chief Brennan the podium to give you a little bit about what his office does for you.
Good evening. As the chief mentioned, my name is John Brennan. I've actually been a member of the department since July '99. I started as a per diem firefighter, did 22 years with the city of Portland, and a little over a year ago, was fortunate enough to be offered a deputy chief position here. So I switched over from Portland full time to working here in Scarborough. In my time in Portland, I did 3 years in the Fire Prevention Bureau there. So that's where all the training classes and whatnot and experience came from. I did do about a year and a half assisting Captain Butler as a 1 day a week person, just to help him manage the workload. And then again, like I said, in end of June of 22, I started here on a full-time basis. So really, as the chief said, it's a collaborative effort. It starts really at the ground floor with Eric and Autumn. I get involved. I'll join them for pre-application meetings. So as when we meet with the contractors or developers or their teams, to get kind of an introduction as to what they're proposing for a project, that will continue on to the pre-construction meetings, and then certainly through the permit process. In Scarborough, we do kind of a joint permit review. So as building permits come into town hall and certainly the office downstairs, I'll review those with a member of the codes team. They're obviously looking at their code enforcement related, so plumbing, heating, electrical. I'll look at the building as a whole as well. If we have any questions, I'll reach out to the state fire marshal if it's a project that requires state fire marshal approval prior to Scarborough. And then certainly any of the fire prevention type permits still get entered downstairs, but then come to my desk. So sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, RAES monitoring. If they're putting in a kitchen hood system, all those I'll actually review through my office. And again, some of those do require some state fire marshal approval prior to me being able to approve. But so I'll put those approvals in, and then we carry that through the progression of the project. At the time of the final inspection, it'll be a joint inspection, or it is a joint inspection with code enforcement and my office. Again, I'll test out my stuff that's in my lane, so the fire alarms and sprinkler systems, while the code officers are going through the building, looking at theirs. And then once my boxes are checked, then I'll jump in with them and participate with the rest of their inspection. As the chief alluded to, obviously a very busy office. We were fortunate last year to be able to acquire a part-time fire inspector that we were able to get through the certification classes. And that's been able to allow me to turn permits around a little bit quicker, because now I don't have to chase every matter that comes in. So for instance, this morning I had 3 items from over the weekend, call responses that needed someone to follow up on this morning. He was able to do that. Today was one of his days. So that allowed me to answer some phone calls, permit questions, get some permit review. And so that's been essential to really keeping our permits turning around. Coming from Portland, obviously, certainly a bigger animal, but permit review there took quite a while, and we hear that it's still in effect from a lot of the contractors who do business in town. And one of the things they really like is the fact that we can get the permits, if everything's submitted in complete packages, we can get it turned around in really usually 2-week window. Certainly there may be some follow-ups if some items are missing, but that's one of the things I try to push on, because I know that there's a lot of deadlines for a lot of people. And if we can at least do our part as getting the permit reviewed, and if it's complete, getting it approved so the project can continue, obviously that's good for everybody, including the town. So that's kind of the review of the process, kind of in a I guess a 10,000 foot view. But certainly if you guys have any questions, as you're aware, Eric runs a meeting, pre-application, excuse me, the planning board meeting with all the department heads. So I'll review a project, and usually I'll send him any comments I have, any concerns. So as it's coming before you, I've already sent him my comments on that, and he's able to then obviously either reach out to the applicant and certainly bring it to your attention when he meets at these planning board meetings. But I'm certainly welcome to any questions you have. Shoot.
What we've seen recently is a lot of calls for Knox boxes. Could you address both what that means, what you look for, and what we should be looking for when somebody comes to us with something that's going to need that sort of a situation?
Yeah, so Knox Box, I've actually just started hearing radio ads for them. It's a nationwide company. Again, we use it in the city of Portland. So I'll require a Knox Box on any new construction if we're going to be requiring sprinklers and fire alarms. Basically what a Knox Box is a key box that's on the side of the building. It can either be surface mounted or it can be recessed. When they go to the knoxbox.com website, they pick the state, the county, and the town of Scarborough. The Knox Box is unique. It's keyed to the town of Scarborough. So if I had a Knox Box key in Scarborough and I tried to open a box in Portland, it wouldn't work. Same as if you took a box off a building, if someone moved from Portland and came to Scarborough, they couldn't remount the box because the key would not work. So it's really a key secure system. The keys are all secured in our fire apparatus. Our firefighters have to enter a code to be able to unlock the key and actually walk away with it. If they try to leave the building, their truck actually has a blue strobe that flashes to let them know they didn't replace the key back in the truck. So it's kind of a fail-safe on our end for security. The other piece that is unique to Scarborough that not many other communities do is we require the Knox Box have a tamper switch. So if a Knox Box is opened and the firefighter has not told our dispatch center that we're there, they'll actually get on the radio dispatch wheel and inquire if anyone is at a certain address. If no one answers, then we'll dispatch Scarborough police to go and investigate if someone tampering with a key box. So to my knowledge, no one's ever gotten into a Knox Box vandalism wise. But it is a key secure. The big thing for us, it allows us quick access into a building. So as you are aware, emergencies never happen just during the day, Monday to Friday, when all the powers to be are on site. Oftentimes it's 2, 3 in the morning. Of course, it's going to be in a snowstorm and the closest key holder is an hour away. So having a Knox box and key access to their building allows our firefighters to go and investigate the problem, oftentimes tell the key holder, yep, you can remain at home. We'll call you back with an update as to what we find. And then we can secure the building again and provide them whatever guidance they need for the next morning to make any corrections if it was a detector issue or something with their sprinkler system. So it allows us that quick access. Our firefighters are very good at forcible entry, and they can usually do it with minimal damage. But obviously there are some doors out there that would require a little bit of damage. And if we have key access, it allows us to get into the building, do our investigation, and then resecure the building and make the notification. So that's something that we've been requiring for as long as I know, or as long as I can remember in Scarborough. It's not retroactive. So if we have a building that does not have a fire alarm, that has a fire alarm or sprinkler, but it's been in existence, let's say for 15 years, and at the time Knox boxes weren't asked for, I'm not asking for them. What we've done is created a letter that basically just states that because they have the systems in their building, it would be very helpful to us to provide a Knox box, but I don't have any reason I can't kind of go back on them. And it just explains that the cost of replacing a door, if we have to force entry, often is going to be exceeding the price of that Knox box. And the other piece, if we pull up to, let's say, a large box store and we don't have anything showing, or even a large apartment building, if we don't have the key access, they're not just going to start, breaking down all the doors. They're going to do the due diligence, do what they can from the outside until a key holder shows up. If there is in fact a problem in the building, until it shows itself, until smoke starts coming out of a window or water starts coming out of a door, they're not going to know there's a condition inside that needs us to then expedite our entry and not wait for the key holder. So oftentimes damage can be done because we're waiting outside for that key holder to arrive. So that's kind of why we require them. And pretty much there's a key box system pretty much all over Greater Portland that many people use, but Knox is definitely the most common.
We also take a look at the auto turns to ensure that the fire department, the trucks can get to the part of the building they need to get to. As we see buildings closer and closer, especially in the Downs area, is there anything we should be looking at that helps you? Or anything that we should know about how you look at some of these buildings that are close together, so that when we're looking at parking situations, at auto turns, things like that, we're actually helping you.
Yeah. So when I start reviewing a site plan, certainly site access is important to us. There's code language that I certainly could provide in writing from the NFPA that talks about how close we need to be able to get to a building. In Scarborough, if you have a building that's got a full sprinkler system and a fire alarm system, what we traditionally have been requiring is that we have access to one long side and then one short side of the building. The sprinkler and fire alarm are going to provide us, the fire alarm is certainly going to provide us that early notification if it's a smoke detector that goes off. And certainly, obviously, what we're gaining with a sprinkler protection is going to ensure that the safety of the residents can evacuate. If we don't have access, if we're not going to have those systems in that building, it doesn't require it either by NFPA code or by our town ordinance and our sprinkler ordinance. Then we look at the accesses and what can we get around that building? Depending on what the occupancy is, do I need 360-degree access? Am I comfortable with 2 long sides? And so we really treat each one individually. The other piece that I always look at is how do we get our truck out at that point? So it's good that we can get into a scene, but if they have to back through a parking lot and we have our backing policy with the department. So if there's more than two people or more on a truck, somebody has to get out and physically walk behind the engine or the ladder truck to get it out of a complex. So those are things we look at as it's great we can get in. Are we going to have hammerheads? You may have obviously seen those in some of the documents, is that will require a hammerhead if it's beyond a certain distance, so that if we have a truck that's at the end of a road, it provides them an area that they can safely turn around. Obviously, we want to reduce the options for backing up as much as possible. I understand, obviously, we can't completely eliminate it, but if we can put some kind of safety measures in there with like a hammerhead turnaround to allow us to safely maneuver the truck and then be able to drive out without having to back a long distance, that's kind of what we look for there. But again, it comes down really project by project. What's the occupancy going to be? What's the life hazard for us? And what safety systems are they going to have in there? Again, fire alarms and sprinklers. And then what are our needs and how close do we need to get to that building? The other thing, obviously, we look at is fire hydrant location. Where is our closest hydrant? And relation to the fire department connection. So those are all kind of things that I'll look at really at that entry point level when it comes across the desk for a project.
Thank you. So far, I've hogged the questions. Rick?
Yeah, what triggers the state fire marshal plan review?
So they have and again, this is something I can provide. They actually have a chart. So this, depending on the type of occupancy, for instance, an assembly building, any type of renovation in an assembly building construction, if it's already been approved and now someone buys it and wants to renovate it, that's something that triggers a state fire marshal permit is required. So there is a list on the state fire marshal website. It lists out by each occupancy type, what has to go to them for review. What I always tend to do, we have a very good relationship. We always have had with a state fire marshal. I'll shoot them an email and just simply say, hey, I'm looking at this project. I think based on your guidelines and your chart that's available online, it looks like you would need to review this and have them confirm either yes or no, they don't need to be involved. There are certain things, if it's over a certain size, if for instance, one occupancy, if they're going to do renovation and it's over 3,000 square feet, then it has to go to them for review. There are some things that they absolutely have to review. Sprinkler systems, for instance, they have to review every sprinkler system, new installation and that gets installed. Kitchen hood suppression systems, as of January of 22, I believe, they have to see all new hood systems. If you have an existing restaurant, for instance, you're taking a hood down and you're going to do some renovations, let's say to ceiling or piping that has nothing to do with the hood, and you're putting the same hood right back, typically they'll just write an email to us saying they reviewed it. It doesn't require a permit because they're basically putting it right back. They're making no changes to it. But there is a pretty extensive list of stuff. So again, when Brian Dobson and I are doing our joint permit reviews, we're looking at that list to find out before we issue in Scarborough, is the state going to require to be looking at that? Because obviously we don't want to put town versus state. So we don't want to put the town in a situation where they're using us and calling the state and say, well, the town of Scarborough approved it. Why aren't you approving it? So we'll do our review, and we always tell our developers, we'll review jointly. You can submit to both at the same time. We'll be ready, have ours off to the side, and we're just basically waiting for that approval. Again, I mentioned the review process and the good relationship we have. Oftentimes the state, when they are emailing the permit to the applicant, they'll actually CC the town. So the code enforcement office and I will also see that. So oftentimes the developer will call us and say, hey, I have my state permit. We're like, yep, and we just approved yours as well because we got it at the same time. So, but there is a list I certainly could provide if you're interested, that'll show you the types of new construction they have to see, as well as what level of construction or renovation or tenant fit up falls into their purview where they have to see that as well.
Well, I'm sure I can get it online, as you said.
Yep.
But I just kind of needed a little narrative. Are they fairly responsive in terms of turnaround time?
They certainly have a backlog. We always tell applicants that we're around a 2-week window here in Scarborough for review, and they'll tell people they're 4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6. Okay.
I have seen them turn around quicker for certain projects. Again, the big thing with the state is completeness, and it is with us as well. If you submit a complete permit where they don't have to go back and forth for questions and they can just review it once and everything they need is there following the guidelines that are outlined in their submittal process, then those permits, once they get their hands on it and it's in front of them, usually can be turned around fairly quickly. It's the back and forth of the incomplete submittals that then they simply say, I've seen it only a couple times where they've gone back and said, you need to start over because it's too many changes, and just give us what you're looking at doing now. Because as plans change, but they want to review things one time. So if it's not all complete, they'll kick it back, and that could obviously delay a process.
My only other comment is, thank you for what you provide the town in terms of fire prevention, but also emergency response. It takes a neighborhood, and you're part of that, and we appreciate the efforts you do.
Thank you. I think one of the big things I'll add that is, I'm only one person, and obviously I have a part-time fire inspector, but our members in the department do a great job. They're like, as I said, over the weekend, I had 3 emails about issues that needed following up on. They're really my eyes that are out there. They're there when the condition exists. They know the conditions that warrant them to stay on the scene and actually call me before they clear to make sure there's nothing we have to deal with right now. Well, maybe they have the person there at 3 a.m. And then certainly get me the the information. They'll send me emails with photos. This is what we ran across. And as you said, it's a team effort. They really put that information in front of me, because if I had to try to catch everything, that a lot of stuff would fall through. So they are certainly finding a lot of safety issues that need to be corrected. And so I do need to give them props, because they're the boots on the ground that are catching it at least at the initial stages. And then obviously we can take whatever action we need to in the days that follow. So.
I guess my only last thing is out of curiosity, our apparatus, are all of them now CAS capable? They all have the foam systems on them?
You want to touch on that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, no. The simple answer is no. We've actually moved away from that very expensive system.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it turned out to be, we had it on most every truck that we had in every station. And as we bought the latest new trucks, we put foam on them, but we didn't put CAFs. They were costing a lot of money to maintain. And realistically, for the 4 structure fires a year that we average, it just cost versus benefit.
Did that change any thought process of these hydrants that are around where there's no city hydrant? The tanks.
Right. Yeah. In the North Scarborough area across the turnpike. It certainly was a consideration. But in the end, I think some of us that have been doing this for close to 30 years, I mean, water, as long as you have the water, that usually does put the fire out. The foam is certainly something that's helpful. But I don't know that I am fully invested in that system as a good cost effective measure to provide fire protection. So it's one of the ways we found some savings in the apparatus we bought recently. And they average about $50,000 just for a system. So
we called it AFFF in the Navy.
yeah, well, I was an Air Force firefighter, so
I used to flood the flight deck of the John F. Kennedy, and they would scrub it down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yes.
Chief, you had indicated at the beginning that you had a couple of things you wanted to talk to us.
Sure, and I just wanted to give one more prop to the deputy chief about one of the things that we're very lucky here in Scarborough is our customer service. He mentioned our turnaround times, but one of the other things that Deputy Chief Brennan brings to the table is he's always looking for alternatives. He works with the contractors. I think he has great relationships. Sometimes we never can move fast for certain people. They just want it to be instantaneous, but John is always looking for an alternative. If there's something we tell a person they have to have, and they're like, well, that's really not cost effective. John takes the time to dig into the code and see if there's an alternative, whether it's sprinklers, whether it's adding an alarm system or doing something else to create a safer environment. I'm really proud that we do that on a regular basis. And also this year we invested in 5 additional fire inspectors that took the training, that are boots on the ground, that go out in the fire trucks and ambulances. And they have that training now that are able to bring that information back to John. We made that investment not only for succession, but also to make sure that we have the eyes in the field when we need them. So just wanted to bring that point up. The other piece I want to just mention, a couple areas that when we got to meet with the council during budget season, a couple of the council members asked some questions about some of our concerns. And I will tell you, as it comes to planning, one of the biggest impacts to our department right now is healthcare facilities, whether they're current or new healthcare facilities. When a healthcare facility goes into the community or proposes a project in the community, there is real impact. As you may know, you see the ambulances going back and forth on Route 1 all day, I'm sure. We are a very, very busy service. We just about capped 5,000 calls for service last year with 2 ambulances on the road. And so any additional healthcare facilities, those are things that we really want to be paying attention to and make sure, not that we want to stop them, but we just want to be on the front end and make sure we understand what the impact of those places. And that means nursing homes, doctors' offices. The hospital at Maine Med is certainly a big business of ours. We spend a lot of time up there with the ambulances. So that's one place. And the other area that we've been talking a lot about is North Scarborough, talking about the tanks and different things like that. We are at a point now where we have, I want to say 71 different pieces of fire protection systems in North Scarborough, whether it's tanks, dry hydrants, things like that. And we are responsible for every single one of those to maintain it, keep it up, make sure they're filled. The crews go out in the summer, all summer, and fill tanks because they leak. They're cement. They eventually get old and they leak. So we're trying to come up with some thoughts and some plans, and we certainly would like to have that conversation with you at some point about what that's going to look like in the future of development, specifically if there's any commercial development up in that area. Residential isn't isn't really hard to overcome. I think that, we convince them for some other things, either whether it's residential sprinklers, if they need it, if they're too far away. I don't think the town has the sustainability or the ability to continue putting in and maintaining fire protection features in that area. I think it's going to become cost prohibitive eventually. So those are the two points that we really wanted to make that are on our minds. We don't have any decisions. We're not making any changes. Those are really on our radar to make sure that we're paying attention to as things come out, because we know there'll be some discussion probably eventually about development in North Scarborough or areas out that way, and just want to be on the front end of that.
Thank you. And we are getting near the end, but let me just ask one final question here. Are there any questions that we as a planning board can ask a healthcare applicant? In other words, somebody who wants to add a urgent care facility or whatever the case is. What should we be asking them that would give you the sort of information that would be helpful to you?
Anything that has a number of patients that are going to be served, like if it's a nursing facility, a bed, the number of beds that are going to be in that. There is a formula that emergency medical services use based on how many beds are in a facility versus how much call volume is going to come out of a facility like that. I apologize, I'm not prepared to fully answer that, but I certainly can get back to you by email. We can put something together on what we're looking at.
Yeah, well, I think, let me talk to Eric and see if we can refine a good question so that perhaps it might be something that we can use in the guidelines when one of those facilities come before us,
Yes.
so that we're all on the same page and we know we're providing you or teasing out some of the answers that you might need to be effective.
Absolutely.
And we are at 6:25, and I really appreciate your coming here. I know the sort of work you guys do. When I lived in Virginia, the house next to me burned down. And I was the first person who saw the smoke and called in. Firefighters were injured.
Oh.
There was, it was the very end of a cul-de-sac, and the fire engines had a great deal of difficulty getting in. So I understand the issues involved in that, and I appreciate all of the work that you and all of your crews do. Thank you very much.
Well, we certainly appreciate this board, and thank you, Autumn and Eric, for inviting us to be part of this. And we're always available if you have any questions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We will adjourn the workshop and reconvene at 6:30. Thank you. The August 7th meeting of the Scarborough Planning Board will please come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Doreen, please call the roll.
King,
Here.
here. Dooley.
Here.
Henriksen.
Here.
Daisy.
Here.
Thank you. All of the regular members are here tonight. So Ben, while you're certainly being involved in participating, you will not be voting. Item number 301, approval of the minutes, July 17th, 2023. Are there any suggestions for changes or corrections before we approve them? No, hearing none. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Approve, motion by Roger Bailey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jen Ladd. Doreen, please call the roll.
Mine King,
Yes.
Mahlad. Yes. Roger Bailey.
Yes.
Ricky Henriksen.
Yes.
Yes.
The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda, item 4.01, consent item. MEVS Solar requests review of a 1.95 megawatt AC utility scale solar system on West Beach Ridge Road. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R42, Lot 2D. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So MEVS has worked with staff in the last couple of weeks to revise the plan sets to show a 40-foot section of the access road off of West Beach Ridge Road being paved. We've confirmed with the fire and engineering departments that this actually meets the town standard for access and grading, as well as for the fire department to allow them to gain access to 2 neighboring water tanks in case of a fire on that part of West Beach Ridge Road. Additionally, the applicant has provided its main DEP permits by rule. Staff has provided the board with a draft motion for consideration, which includes standard solar system conditions of approval. That includes a performance guarantee for decommissioning, a interconnection agreement, stormwater agreements, as well as a payment for a fee to remove part of the property from the assessing department's tree growth program. So that's been provided for the board's consideration. And with that, I would turn it over to the board back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a representative of the applicant here?
Hello,
Thank you.
thank you. Good evening, Chad Shabazi, Senior Vice President, Project Development for Synergy Power MEVS LLC. Thank you for having us tonight.
All right. Basically, because this is a consent item, have you read the draft motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything on there that you object to?
No, ma'am.
You're willing to do everything that's there?
Yes, and we want to thank you for Eric and Autumn and all of the staff and the board for the last 2 years working back and forth, along with the fire. I saw Deputy Fire Chief Brennan. I said hi to him outside. He was extremely helpful as well. So just want to thank everyone that was involved in the stakeholder process for this project.
Thank you. Let me turn to the board. Any last minute questions, concerns?
I have none, Madam Chair.
Staff feels comfortable going forward. Therefore, I have a draft motion. I move to approve the project titled Waterhouse Solar proposed by MEVS LLC as depicted on the plan set prepared by C Energy dated 7/20/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the proposal is for a 2.66 megawatt AC ground-mounted solar institution in the area of 22 West Beach Ridge Road, Assessors Map R42, Lot 2D. As part of the proposal, the applicant will pave the first 40 feet of the access road from West Beach Ridge Road and replace the existing culvert over Finnard Brook. Conditions: 1, prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall: A, pay the tree growth withdrawal penalty as determined and approved by the assessing department. B, address comments in the staff memo dated 8/7/23. C, address comments in the Haley Ward memo dated 8/1/23. D, provide finalized surety document in accordance with performance standards for utility scale solar energy systems. E, provide an interconnection agreement from the energy provider. F, execute and record a stormwater maintenance agreement with the town. The form of the stormwater maintenance agreement is located in Appendix 1 of the Town of Scarborough, Chapter 419, Post-Construction Stormwater Infrastructure Management Ordinance. G, install a private driveway sign in accordance with Chapter 309, Town of Scarborough Street Name and Number Ordinance. The sign shall be white with blue lettering. The sign must be a minimum of 6 inches in height with lettering not less than 4 inches in height. H, address planning board comments as discussed in the 8/7/23 meeting. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. 2, the access road to the array shall be kept clear of snow during winter months. Additionally, the access road must be kept in drivable condition year-round. If at any time the road is not maintained as accessible by the town emergency response, this will be considered a violation of this approval. 3, the Finnard Brook culvert replacement shall be conducted by a Maine DEP certified contractor. Any work on this culvert from October 2nd to July 14th is subject to Army Corps of Engineer permits. 4, prior to the start of construction, the applicant shall coordinate a pre-construction meeting. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. All plan modifications are to be completed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. A, prior to the pre-construction meeting, the final utility layout within the array shall be provided to town staff. 5, prior to issuance of a certificate of completion, the applicant shall A, submit evidence in the form of a letter of plan prepared and stamped by a professional engineer who either prepared the post-construction stormwater management plan and its associated facilities, or supervised the plan and facilities construction and implementation. The letter of plan shall certify that the stormwater management facilities have been installed in accordance with the approved post-construction stormwater management plan and that they will function as intended by said plan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rich Meinking. Doreen, will you please call for the vote?
Rick King,
Yes.
yes. Roger Bailey,
Yes.
Ricky Henderson.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
and congratulations.
Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you, George.
And let me say, we've appreciated the way you've worked with us and with the staff when we've had concerns. You've addressed them. You've gone, I think, happily from our perspective, to work with us to come up with something that we can all be proud of.
Well,
Thank you.
this is our 11th project in the state of Maine, and I have to say, this is the most organized and detail-oriented board, and commending the board as well as the staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome to Scarborough.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Mr. Beely has suggested we're entitled to a pay raise. I think Mr. Beely should present that, please, to the
Pay
town
raise.
council and see what happens.
Free to 100%. Okay, it's still free.
Mr. Meinking has suggested 100% pay increase. Item 4.02, Stephen Cayazzo requests site plan review of a 1,664 square foot building addition to the side of the existing business at 93 Mussey Road. The area between the two buildings will be converted from gravel to pavement. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R55, Lot 13. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Chiazzo Plumbing is currently in front of the board with a site plan in addition to their existing building, which would be used for some storage. The project was last before the board on June 5th for a sketch plan review. where the board requested some clarification on EV conduit being installed in the area that would be paved, as well as a landscape plan showing buffering from Muzzy Road. The engineering staff and peer reviewers have indicated some concerns with stormwater, which the applicant should be prepared to discuss. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And for the applicant. Please go to the podium and give your name and relationship to the project.
Good evening. My name is Peter Delfonso. I'm a civil engineer. I'm the engineer on the project. Yes, we did receive the comments last Friday. And I decided to take the weekend off, so I've gone through them. I have some comments on them and some clarifications that I would need to keep going. I don't see any real problems with any of the comments. I think we can work through them fairly easily. On the staff comments, I just need a slight clarification on the EV conduit requirement there. It talks about extending the conduit to 3 spaces. And then it talks about one of the spaces being, I don't know if you're requiring a charging station there or not. Is that what that's saying?
Yeah, the explanation looks just a little confusing here. Eric, could you clarify for the applicant?
Sure. So as part of the town's zoning ordinance, section 11 for off-street parking standards, commercial uses require, I believe it's one up on the ordinance right now. They require 5% spaces to be EV ready, which means electrical conduit
Yeah.
with the capacity. And then another 20% of spaces to be EV capable, which is basically the conduit without that charge to serve the development. And I think doing some quick math, the 25% of the 12 spaces was 3 or 4 spaces. So
Okay.
extending that from 1 space to.
Okay, so it's just the conduit that we're looking for at this point.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. The next item, you were talking about the driveway and the aisle and the parking spaces being larger than what the ordinance recommends. And the reason behind that was just that a lot of the employees that drive pickup trucks, and we also have 7 vans that we use constantly, and they drive in and out, and it makes for a little easier maneuvering. We can easily change that if that's going to be a requirement, but
Yeah, I guess that was just something we were curious maybe to discuss with the board. That's a couple extra feet of impervious area. So I mean, it might make sense with the larger vehicles, but I mean, that's certainly going to be up to the board to discuss and determine. So it's just an item of clarity.
okay. That was. And then lighting, I apologize for that we haven't submitted a lighting plan yet. We're working with our electrician, but these days electricians appear to be out straight and it's hard to get much from them. So we will get that to you soon. The landscape plan, we submitted the landscape plan as required. I sent it back to the landscape architect. He did mention that the way he read the ordinance, it didn't say that you couldn't use non-native species. It suggested that you use them, but it didn't say they were required. And that's why he has some other species in there. But we're open to, it's not a big deal. So
We do have acceptable alternatives to the non-native, I mean, to the native species. So the landscape architect should be able to
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah, I'm having him check those out. We'll get the plan revised and back to you.
Thank you.
The next item was the outdoor storage. The existing fence is the gray stockade fence. And the plan is to extend that with the same materials. And that was it
So
on the
when you-
staff
I
comment.
mean, when you say stockade, you mean wood,
Yes,
wooden? Okay.
it's a cedar fence, 6 feet tall and basically a solid wall. And then there are some comments, a lot of comments from Haley Ward. I've been through those. The general comments, the wetland delineation that was completed in August of 22. So, and I will get that to Eric. I don't think that I submitted that. I might have earlier, but I don't. So I think that meets the requirements. I left off the sewer, the existing sewer that runs out to the sanitary sewer in Muzzy Road. They comment on the roof drip edge. The issue with that is that I did show a drain, a footing drain on the details, but that was the standard detail, and we are not able to have a footing drain that deep because we can't discharge it anywhere. That would be below anywhere we can direct the water. So the way I was handling that is I've used these in the past. The smaller storms go into the drip edge. They go through the filter and they infiltrate slowly into the ground. When you get a larger storm, it builds up and overflows and sheet flows with the rest of the drainage from the site. And I can answer any questions you might have on that too. Their next item was talking about erosion control, and I have no issues with that. And then the next item is grading at the ADA parking spot, and that does need to be adjusted. I checked that out, and it's a little steep, so we need to get that down. And then there's a question about access for emergency vehicles. And the only question I have on that is what size vehicle do we have to show can get in there?
I can check with the fire department.
Okay.
and, give you the
All
specs.
right. And then the stormwater issues are just, we use a program called HydroCAD, and I'm sure you've seen many of them. It's a model, and it depends on the input and your interpretation of the variables in the model. And sometimes, and most of the time, different engineers from different firms don't agree. So I just have to sit down with them and go through it. I don't think the overall outcome is going to be any different because the site is so small, it just can't change that much. So I'm sure we can work it out. And those are the only issues that and I'm here for questions.
All right, I am going to turn this over to the board, not in any order, but if someone wants to raise their hand. Ben?
I'd just like to, look into the size of the parking a little bit more. I know you mentioned you're looking at larger vehicles. You could get by with smaller, seems to be it's kind of an order of, a balancing act. So maybe if we could have some information both ways as to what the impacts would be on the stormwater and everything else with a larger lot versus a little bit smaller.
maybe the,
Well, we have 12 spaces, so if we,
okay.
yeah, so it's not that gonna change much.
Okay.
I did go a foot wider on the entrance coming off of Muzzy Road, that can be narrowed up. And the aisle in between the parking spaces. But it's just I drive a pickup and, most of the time in the newer parking lots, I have to jockey around a little bit to get it in. And then you can't open the doors, so.
I understand how that can go. Yep. Thanks.
Madam Chair. Okay. I guess following up on that, playing off that, what's the difference in square footage are we talking about for additional asphalt for the slightly larger parking spots? Are we just talking a few feet? A few dozen square feet,
I did a quick count and it's about 80 square feet,
Oh,
80 square
for the
feet?
entryway as well.
Okay,
thank you.
so I guess it's up to board to figure out
It's-
80 additional square feet is a lot or not a lot for this particular one. And I can empathize with the challenge of having a lot of big trucks parked next to each other, just trying to get out, and it's not like they're asking for a whole lot here on site, but I understand that we have, I'm the first one to complain about too much asphalt on a property. But that's just my thought right now for the board.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
I saw Rick first and then Roger.
Just to play off of that theme, I think I'll reserve my comment until we see an auto turn or something with the emergency vehicles to see how that operates. And then I'll be better informed to make a decision on that.
Thank you. Roger?
Yes, I think the applicant is very amenable to just about everything that's in staff report as well as the peer review comments, which is commendable. As far as the parking is concerned, I don't have a problem with them because they know what their employees drive. And we're not talking about a large volume here as far as I'm concerned. So
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to agree with Jim and Roger and Rick. But I would like to see the auto turn before I say, yeah, not a problem. I think in one respect, 80 square feet is de minimis, but in another respect, that's another tree and about 3 good shrubs. So I want to, I would like to see the auto turn. And I think basically, I would probably come down on the side of we can leave it where it is. But let's wait until next time. And when we see all of the changes that you have brought to us, I'm confident that if you work with the staff, you will be able to finish this up.
Okay,
Thank you very much. See
okay,
you next
thank
time.
you. Appreciate it.
Item number 4.03. Crossroads Holdings LLC requests review of the 10th Amendment Innovation District subdivision of Scarborough at Scarborough Downs. The amendment adds area to at the intersection of Innovation Way and Downs Road to existing Lot 2 of the subdivision. It also splits off some of that additional land into newly created Lot 55. The property is further identified as Assessor's Map U53, Lot 2. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think that's pretty much as simple as it gets. Expanding Lot 2 from previously undeveloped area, as well as splitting off some of that new area into Lot 55. Staff has some minor questions on some of the Cobra items compared to the recently approved 9th amended Innovation District subdivision, which approved a roundabout at Innovation Way and Downs Road, as well as some general stormwater and gravel wetland comments. A draft motion of approval has been provided for the board's consideration with these items in mind. And with that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant.
Good evening, Board. Drew Gagnon with Coral Palmer representing Crossroad Holdings. Autumn, if I could share my screen, I just have a quick slideshow here. I will be brief.
I can't stop sharing, but I don't have any. Oh, I see.
Eric, I can send this to you and you can share it, maybe.
Yeah.
What I want to do is apologize because this is an item that is available for public comment, as were the other two. But I'm not going to hold a retroactive public comment, but I am going to hold a public comment period. For this, understanding that Drew is having some problems there.
Oh, I can join as a panelist. Okay, now I have, oh, I'm disabled from screen sharing here. I did send it to you, Eric, too, if you want to pull it up.
For those folks who are watching us online and wondering what the silence is, technology is acting up a little bit. So we're trying to figure out how to screen share here.
Yeah. I can now. I can share.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the magic appears to be working now and we can continue.
I thank you everyone for your time. I really hope this lives up to the delay here, but I apologize if it doesn't. So I'm gonna skip forward here. I just wanted to orient the board on the location of our application. It's right here in the red, so you can see on the screen. This is the 10th amended subdivision for an innovation district presented in front of you here. Costco is located just across the Innovation Way, which is on the northern part of the plan east on this plan. Wanted to quickly go over the subdivision scope. Eric did a good job introducing it. A little bit of background. In April of 2022, the board approved the master plan amendment that updated the developable area in this. And so here we are in the next step for the subdivision application. So this scope includes modification of the Lot 2 property line and the creation of a Lot 55 located along Innovation Way. There's no other utility or roadway infrastructure as part of this application. All the utilities are included within the Innovation Way right away that will tap into, or stubs have been left previously. We are proposing a gravel wetland stormwater facility at the south of Lot 2, right down here in this dashed line, for the additional disturbed area that's provided in this application. Included with this will be the trail realignment through Lot 2 previously, and I have actually a next slide that shows kind of the comparison for those two, so I'll wait to speak on that. And I did want to mention that the main DEP permit is in hand for this. That was received back in March of this year. This is a good comparison that was also included in the staff memo, but this is the 9th amended innovation plan. This is showing the existing condition of Lot 2 lot lines. Lot 2 is currently undeveloped. I believe it's being used as a stockpile right now for the adjacent Costco project. The 9th amended was provided just for modifications to the right of way for the roundabout, which is at the corner of this lot. And this is the proposed innovation district plan. You can see that Lot 2 has been modified and grown in size to include the new developable area. And then Lot 55 is provided right at the corner there of Innovation Way, where it takes a bend next to Lot 30 here, which is, I believe is Dillon's sheet metal. This is the existing trail alignment through Lot 2. You can see the existing developable limit of Lot 2 right here. And this is the blue line is the current trail alignment. We're proposing to realign it, hugging the wetland on the east side and the stormwater management facility on the west side as you come up. So we're still providing the connection from Innovation Way to the trail down by south of DPR that connects over. We're just realigning it to move it out of the way for a Lot 2 potential development. As far as stormwater approach, it's a little bit confusing, but what we provide, and this is what was approved through the DEP. So the red area is the existing Lot 2 area that's been disturbed. This area was permitted back in 2019 to go to the wet pond that Costco modified. So that large pond out behind Costco there. The blue area was all undevelopable area. So that was, that's just showing the comparison in that. Our proposed approach is we're switching the red area. So the area going to the wet pond to the new Lot 55 in the corner there. And the new gravel wetland facility that you can see in the dash line down here is taking the flow from all of Lot 2. We did this simply so we weren't crossing storm drain pipe, and it makes a little more sense because of the location of the pond and the inlets to switch those two around. This gravel wetland facility will outlet down to an existing ditch that runs east-west, kind of in a field area south of the Innovation District, and then it intercepts to another ditch that carries that flow down to Millbrook. So we're not touching any of that infrastructure as part of this proposal. We're just building the pond and outletting it and doing some slight reconfiguration of the initial ditch. And then it's got another 1,000, 2,000 feet until it gets to Millbrook tributary down over by Sawyer Road. I did want to touch on just a few of the comments that we received, and we're happy to provide additional detail as well as in agreement with most of them. I just did want to mention, so we're providing, we will provide updated watershed maps showing a better scale to kind of help the third-party peer reviewer and the review. We have done some test pits as part of our high-intensity soil survey within this area and within the gravel wetland, showing that we can get it to work based on groundwater and other engineering factors. That was included in attachment 5, but we can work with the peer reviewer on getting those to them directly. We are proposing a liner for the facility to make sure that the permanent water level is at where we want it to be designed. And then there was a question regarding the wetland crossing culverts. So there were two originally permitted right when you enter Innovation Way in 2019. That was when there were wetlands on either side of the road. And the Army Corps wanted these culverts spaced 50 feet for wildlife crossings. We're keeping one of the culverts now. We propose to move the other one because it's redundant and we don't have that wetland crossing anymore. The wetland receded back. And so that's really insignificant. At this point, we're going to keep one of the culverts for drainage overflow, if you will, based on our, field review. Not a whole lot of flow is going into that. It's very sandy soil and the wetland pretty much absorbs all the flow that comes off the Costco site. Very minimal that does go there. We're proposing to leave it just as a drainage overflow. And we think that the second one is insignificant and really just going to create additional structures for the town to maintain. So we're happy to coordinate that with the roundabout plans as those go into construction. And that was just the comment. I just wanted to clarify that. So we're seeking approval this evening, and I appreciate everyone's time, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The item that is subject or available for public comment. Is there any member of the public in the room or online who would care to comment? If you do, please give your name and address. And if you are in the room, please approach the podium. No one online. Okay. And nobody stampeding to the podium in the room. I declare the public comment period over, and I'm going to turn this over to the board. I'm not going to go up and down the row. Just let me know if you want to ask questions. Jim, go ahead.
Going back to the trail, the original trail images. Are there sidewalks? There are sidewalks on either side as it exits out on the Costco Innovation side. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And was the realignment of the trail meant to just better suit it to contour against that lot 2 that you're proposing here?
Correct. It's just so if any future development there, we're not working around a trail and it's hugged more towards where the natural resources are and a little bit more trail-like, if you will.
Great. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Ben.
I'm just wondering if you could address the first staff comment regarding a potential buffer for the grading next to the wetland lines. You didn't put any in there, but they said we should maybe discuss whether that was appropriate, and if you have any thoughts on that.
Certainly, we provided a 5-foot buffer from Toa Slope to the wetlands that provides for erosion control enough in between and a little bit of room so that we're not encroaching on the wetlands. We feel like that's adequate at this time for this plan. So.
And does staff agree with that's adequate?
I mean, I guess that's really up to the board, and there's also opportunity come site plan to talk about sort of what would be present for any construction at that time. So it's really the board's decision.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jen?
I have questions about that. So first, let me make sure I'm understanding this. So the proposal here is to sort of regrade the site to its maximum, right? And that's why you're up against the wetland boundaries.
Correct.
So I kind of understand that approach if it's like a more rectangular lot to, optimize the extent of potential developability. I think I made that word up. But for such an irregular shaped site like this, I'm curious why the approach to max it out at this stage. Because it's kind of hard for me to picture, typically development is rectangular-ish, you have a building and an offset parking field and maybe some stormwater. But the shape of this site is just sort of not that. So I'm curious why the maximum approach.
Yeah, certainly. And at this point, we don't know what's going on this lot. So we're really just trying to leave it open for ourselves. But to your point, on a general site layout, you probably wouldn't go in every nook and cranny in this wetland, just given functionality and able to try to make things fit that are very rectangular, as you mentioned. So I think the idea is that we're just held a constant offset to maximize the lot during site planning, like Eric mentioned. We certainly wouldn't grade right up to the wetland if it wasn't necessary. It's more or less just having that flexibility. So I'd ask that during future site plans, we could revisit in all locations, the locations to the wetlands. We just wanted something to kind of start with.
And maybe a procedural question here or for staff, does approval of this plan as proposed allow them to begin clearing and doing this grading, or do they have to come back for a site plan approval before that point?
Well, I think that would mostly be subject to like any stumping and grubbing if there's going to be any of those removed, because as Drew probably knows, that really changes the flow of the stormwater on the site. So I mean, I think they certainly could do that if that was, included in the DEP permit area, which it sounds like it is.
Mhm.
So DEP has already allowed that to happen, allowed by way of issuing their permit, you can go clear the site.
Correct. Yeah, we can disturb the site at the state level at this point. We're going through the local review process to stump it and grub it and prepare it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I just have, I don't feel like we have any reason to suspect that you would do this, but again, our due diligence, none of us have a crystal ball, so to speak. But I'm a little bit uncomfortable permitting or allowing this site to be cleared to this extent as shown on this plan, without an understanding of, the proposed use, because I think it, and I don't know, again, I don't know this lot in particular, what types of trees and vegetation may be out there, but it's my sense that if you were to clear to this extent, it'd be pretty hard to go backwards if then you came forward with a smaller, with a site plan development for this lot that had a smaller footprint. And if I'm misunderstanding that, or that's not a shared concern, that's fine, but that based on what I'm looking at, that was one of my concerns at this point. Aside from that, I have a couple other questions about the trail. My understanding, well, actually, can you remind me, my understanding initially was that the trail in this alignment, that there was a pretty robust crossing intended for Innovation Way to somewhat correlate to the end of this trail. Do I have that right? And is that in yet or not?
Correct. I don't think surface pavement's on Innovation Way yet, so the final configuration isn't there, but the crossing you're referring to is, I believe, right here where there's actually some trailhead parking. And the previous alignment brought the trail goers across Innovation Way here and then across there. So I think if anything, this trail alignment is probably a little bit more centrally located by where you'd park and cross. So that's one of the benefits of moving the trail here.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Thanks. My only request with regard to that would just be that the trail is continued in its width to wherever that crossing is. And if it transitions from a stone dust path to a more, concrete, no pun intended, sidewalk surface, that's fine. I just think the width is kind of key there. And I think I saw a note that this is in the trail, the relocated trail is intended to be 8 feet wide. Is that right? And stone dust.
So this blue trail is going to be 4 feet wide. There's going to be an access path down here for the stormwater facility to access. That'll be 10 feet wide. So
Okay.
a portion of, and this access path can be used as a trail indirectly, kind of connecting. So that's where the difference might be.
Great. So yeah, that was my question, was like, how would someone know? Maybe they don't care, or maybe we don't need them to know whether they're on one or the other. But in terms of just navigating, I don't know if there's an overall, this is a larger question. I don't know if there's an overall plan down the road to identify by map or website or something like that, like this, the entire development on the Downs is coming to the table with a pretty significant network of trails, which I think is great. Which I sort of know, but that's because I'm sitting on this board seeing all these plans constantly. And I do think it would be really important and just a tremendous amenity to this community and the larger community to have an easy way to communicate that to the greater public. And this is the small example of that, such that you could look at a map and be like, oh, this is a maintenance road that goes to a stormwater pond versus the trail that I want to take to get up to wherever I'm going, kind of thing. So just a little wayfinding question there.
And not to cut you off,
Yeah.
Jenna, but great question, because the one time we actually have Jessica Stonberg from M&R Holdings here, she's developing a master trail plan and wayfinding signage plan. So if you'd like her to speak to that, I'm happy to have her.
Sure. I
Yes,
didn't,
please.
I swear I didn't know that.
Jessie Stoneberg, M&R Holdings. Presently, I have been, over the past couple years, been working on a master trails plan. I have a long history of recreational planning, so there is a ongoing working master trails map. And basically what it's going to do in the end is show any user the surface type, the width, the types of users that might be found on that same trail. And certainly, a master trails plan with directional signage, wayfinding, trailheads, and all those types of things.
Great.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see that.
Thanks.
Also, you probably have your work cut out for you because there's a lot of trails. That's it. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Roger?
Yeah, Drew, my impression is that basically you want to make this lot similar to what you did with the rest of Innovation Way, basically clear it to make it available for prospective developers.
Correct.
And that's essentially what you're asking for right now.
Correct.
And is it important to do this right now, this particular lot, because of the roundabout, the rotary you're doing there, to try and pull it all together and get that end of the development all, developed as much as you can?
Yeah, I think it's part of the natural marketing of the lot and design of the whole subdivision is trying to coordinate all these projects together while we work on them. So regarding, the roundabout going under construction here shortly, and then having this lot, available while there's contracting crews there and having it marketed at that degree is really important to the development team. So
I understand what Jen was getting at, because, obviously we don't want more trees cut than need be, but if I'm not mistaken, most of the lots in the Innovation District were about 1 acre lots, weren't they? A little over?
yeah, correct. Yep.
So you could conceivably have anywhere from, say, 6 or 9 lots in that one spot.
In this proposed,
Yeah.
I think it'd probably be smaller, a little smaller than that, but at this time, the possibility to subdivide it further is obviously there upon a site plan, but at this time, we're just looking for one subdivision with modifying the lot 2 and adding that separate other little lot.
If you didn't clear it all right now, do you see a demand right now to clear this and start marketing it right away? And do you see a demand right away to occupy these lots?
Yeah, I think kind of speaking to the success of the Innovation District so far and having all the lots sold out, I'd answer that as yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. I've got a couple of comments that kind of lead towards what would happen if an applicant came forward with a project for this lot and for lot 55. So I look at lot 55. It looks as though a section of that lot along the street is located where the map of the Innovation District is and the various mailboxes. Is that correct?
The mailboxes are further down, but that's the trailhead parking and the sidewalk that bumps around it that we're providing an easement for.
Okay. I guess what I would say is the applicant comes to us sooner or later for lot 55. The placement of a driveway there is going to be very important because both of the turn and the placement of the trailhead and the location of the mailboxes, which actually on C100 looks as though really is part of lot 55. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you're looking at that. I also think as I look at this, I don't see 6 buildings here, but I do see the potential for a subdivision there. For 2 or 3 lots, buildings coming in there. And because of that, to me, I would really like to see a larger buffer with the wetlands, just to make sure. So that's not something that I'm willing to require right now as you're grading the lot. But again, as somebody comes to us with a proposed building there, I think we really need to take a hard look at the buffer. The change in the wetlands in this area has been dramatic. As I recall, originally, most of this area was wetland, and there hadn't been any sort of thought to developing it. And now the wetlands, the water's going someplace. And to me, it can come back too. So I would suggest that we, for me at least, as we go along, I'm going to want to see some significant buffering around the wetlands that we do have. So it's not something, again, that I'm going to say thou must do right now, and we'll put it in the draft motion. But I think as you come before us, it's something you, from my perspective, that you need to take a look at. I think I had one other question. Let me see if I can find it. No, I think you answered the question about the culverts. For the gravel wetland 6, the Haley Ward memo says, number 3, the maximum ponding depth of a gravel wetland should be 3 feet as large changes in water level not conducive to the growth of wetland plants. It appears this design exceeds this limit and should be addressed. Do you have any comment there?
Yeah. So what part of our design challenges are always trying to tighten everything up and create as much buffer and tighten up these facilities. So one way we do that is we believe that we have about a 3.7 foot ponding depth and a 25-year storm for this facility. So it's 8 inches or so over the recommended 3 foot. We've made provisions that during the landscaping plans, we have plants that can tolerate that. We'll either maybe plant plants that are less receptive to that kind of water ponding a little further up the slope to alleviate that concern. For us to drop that below the 3 feet, we're gonna have to expand the pond's footprint, which is just impacting more area and likely gonna get a little closer to the wetland. So that we were trying to have a balance there of respecting the DEP, BMP recommendations, but also at the same time trying to limit impact and development footprints.
Okay, I guess the comments I made before are relevant here as well as applicants come forward with site plans, larger buildings, smaller buildings, more buildings, fewer buildings. We're going to have to take a hard look at what that wet gravel wetland is doing and how it's operating. And we might say at another point, sorry, you're going to have to make some changes here or there or whatever. So just thinking of what can happen in the future. That's all the comments I have. We do have anybody else? Last final thoughts? We have a draft motion. The 10th Amendment Innovation District subdivision. I move to approve the project titled the Downs Innovation District 10th Subdivision, amended subdivision proposed by Crossroads Holdings LLC as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 7/17/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings. The proposal constitutes the 10th amended Innovation District subdivision at Scarborough Downs. The amendment includes expansion of Lot 2 at the corner of Downs Road in Innovation Way from 2 acres to 10.3 acres. This is accomplished via inclusion of previously undeveloped land not part of the original subdivision. Additionally, a 1.6 acre piece of the previously undeveloped land is being split off as an additional lot, Lot 55, in the subdivision adjacent to Dillon Street Metal on Lot 30. Conditions: 1, prior to release of the signed subdivision plan for recording, the applicant shall A, address comments in the staff memo dated 8/7/23, B, address comments in the Haley Ward memo dated 8/1/23. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. This is second by Roger Beely. Doreen, please call for the vote.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
No.
Rick Manking,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
and Jim Huber.
No.
3-2, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you should take the rather unusual split vote into consideration as you move forward on this.
Understood. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item 4.04, Allagash Brewing Company requests site plan review of a 9,300 square foot tasting room and demonstrative brewing operation. The project is located on Lot 2 of the Higas District subdivision, assessors map R52, Lot 4. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Allagash is in front of the board with a site plan request for a tasting room and accessory kitchen at Scarborough Downs. The tasting room would allow for demonstrative brewing as a small batch processing use. Staff's primary concern revolves around the parking lot landscaping, architecture facing Market Street and the parking lot, as well as a potential overflow parking area. As an item of clarity, the sign on the signage being too large, staff mistakenly used the entire area of the sign, including the mount, which is actually not included in the 100 square foot maximum in the Crossroads Plan Development District. So that's just providing a little bit of clarity for the board that that calculation is likely much smaller. The applicant should be prepared to speak to these points with the board tonight as it conducts its first site plan review for the project. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And for the applicant, please name and role in the project.
Hello, my name is Chris Taylor. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics. I'm the agent for Allagash.
Off you go.
All right. Thank you very much for having us tonight and hearing this project. As Eric indicated, we are proposing a small batch brewing and tasting room facility. This is within the Downs subdivision off of Market Street in the Haggis Parkway zoning district. In addition to the tasting room, there's also a 1,200 square foot roof canopy structure that would be used for some outdoor seating area that's shown off to the right of the building, as well as an accessory kitchen that would be used to provide food service for customers. Access to the site is off of Market Street. The driveway location is in the proposed, as was shown during the subdivision approval. It's directly across from the proposed driveway on Lot 1 in this district. The intent of kind of the site layout and the orientation of everything was to provide significant tree buffer along Market Street and try to keep the site as wooded as possible, and maintain that appearance, down Market Street of a wooded site. We've tried to keep, the opening in the tree cut, along Market Street as narrow as possible. And you'll notice that it's really just a driveway and, some utility connections going to the building that is requiring the opening in the tree cut there, and keeping the rest of the site, and buffer, as thick as possible. We've also provided a fire lane in front of the building, which you can see in this location right here, to loop through the parking lot. For parking, we are showing and proposing 77 spaces total, which is, slightly more than the required 74 parking spaces required by code. That, includes 44 ADA spaces, 4 EV ready, parking spaces, and 16 EV capable parking spaces. Layout of the parking lot, is curved, and this was done, as a way for access to the site, as well as to minimize the appearance and the view of the 77 parking spaces that are proposed. We're also, planning and showing this area, which is to be used for stormwater, as a overflow, parking if necessary, as well as a future expansion of the parking if demand requires for that. On the pedestrian access, we are providing a connection to the existing, or to the Downs Trail connection. There's a trail connection, kind of in the southern portion of the site right here, that with a crosswalk across the parking lot. There's sidewalks along the edge of the parking lot, and they also connect out to the sidewalk and crosswalk, that's in Market Street as well. For the landscaping was provided or was prepared by a registered landscape architect. We're including in the design some large landscape islands, located here adjacent to the parking lot. There are a couple landscape islands within the parking lot and some screening, in this kind of utility corridor section, to kind of make up some of the trees that have to be removed to get the construction of the building and utilities in. There's also landscaping provided around the building of the foundation, as well as some seat walls that, are in front of the building here and here. Due to, these are kind of, natural seat walls, almost retaining walls, because these will be large, mounded landscaped islands to give everything a little bit more height and, bulk upon planting. For traffic generation, the latest traffic generation memo, that was submitted, after kind of some review with, the town's traffic consultant, is accounting for 81 trips in the PM peak hour and 177 trips in the Saturday peak hour. This is based on the ITE brewery use code. And it does include, the canopy structure over here for the outdoor seating. Stormwater treatment for the lot is proposed to, by a subsurface sand filter, which is located in the southeast portion here. This is all underground, storage and treatment, which will be, discharged to outlet or to Willowdale Brook, in this location here. This is where the outlet is proposed. And the subsurface sand filter has been sized for, an expansion if this area is converted to, parking if needed. So it has been sized for that. Eric also mentioned that we are proposing 2 signs at the driveway entrances, one on each side. These are existing signs that are proposed to be relocated from the Portland facility of Allagash. The reason for the 2 signs is that they are like a cut metal, and so it goes through, and they're not legible on the backside. So it's not a sign that you can put up and view from both sides. So we're proposing one on each side to kind of capture and make it visible for cars or pedestrians approaching from either side of the driveway entrance. There are pictures included of those signs. That's at the very end of the application that was submitted. I can show those if you'd like to look at those. And finally, I think we've got permits permits were submitted and were approved by DEP for this layout. The permits were an amendment to some of the Downs original DEP applications that did show development on this site, as well as a subsurface sand filter for stormwater treatment. And I guess at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Bradley of SMRT, who can give a discussion about the building architecture.
I'm sorry? Okay, perfect. Good evening. My name is Andrew Bradley, Principal and Project Manager for SMRT, Architects and Engineers. My apologies to start with. I'm a structural engineer, so I'm going to do my best to put on an architect's hat to talk you through the architecture. If I could go back a little bit to the site plan. Okay. So one of the things I thought was important for the architecture to sort of talk through was actually the orientation of the building to the site. We spent a lot of time looking at solar orientation, predominant winds, and it was one of the reasons that the building got sort of faced away from Market Street was to take advantage of the southern exposure. One of the owner's goals was to have people come to this site and sort of leave the hubbub of the world behind, have this nice landscaped buffer, have a space where they could park the car, walk away from it, and feel like they're back in nature. So that sort of connection to the trail system, being surrounded by the woods, was part and parcel with how this project was developed. It's really part of the fundamental goals of the owner and Allagash is to have this sort of step away from life feel. So the building was meant to reflect some of this. The materials are really kind of a modern take on traditional materials. So we have heavy timber structure, board and batten siding, masonry sort of gives you the anchoring to the ground. And it also helps identify sort of the showcase of this site. Of course, our rendering doesn't do justice for what's behind that pop up to the left, but that is the home for these beautiful copper kettles, which are antique brewing equipment from Belgium. In that shape, that sort of strange trapezoidal shape, is a recreation of the space that it was originally built into in Belgium. So that sort of trapezoidal shape is from a strange intersecting street. And these kettles are put on display, sort of raised up off the ground. So as you walk by, as you drive into the site, it's sort of the beacon to come and see, this is their sign, this is their demonstration equipment, and this is the reason that everyone's going to want to come. So you can see the kettles extend out through the roof. The days when that beer is being brewed, there will be some steam that comes out, make it look very cool. But overall, and also we are not showing the correct landscape here. I should note, this is sort of the, as if it were in Texas landscape, dead flat and a couple trees out back. But please don't take that landscaping image to heart. Wayfinding was mentioned before in some of the trails discussions. And I think one of the things we did here, I think effectively, was sort of proportion the materials and the glazing, as well as that pop out entrance to help people find their way into this space. And if that trapezoidal space with the copper kettles is the reason you're coming, you know that the pop out entrance with the Allagash sign is the way to get in. One more, just sort of close up. Heavy timber structure sort of reflects, Maine's tradition of timber heavy woods. This is one of the goals of the project is really sustainability, low embodied carbon footprints. So the structure goes a long way to bring that to the site and to the project. I guess I've worked through all the high points of what I wanted to hit. Happy to answer any questions if there are any about the look and feel of the building.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jim. You have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andrew, question. So what siding is being used on that in this particular rendering here? Like, what's the rest of the siding? I guess the building siding going to be? What's the material?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the site plan because I'm an engineer. So at the corners there, we're seeing in plan at the base is a masonry coursing, and then back on this backside where the employees have a break room is another sort of anchor, a band of masonry going up the side of the building. The balance of the building siding is, as you see here, board and batten cedar. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you done with your presentation?
I am if you are.
All right, this is an item that is available for public comment. If there is any member of the public in the room or online who would like to comment, please approach the podium. I'll give you to the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Nobody online? Public comment is closed. And turn this over to the board. I'm just going to go down the line and ask Rick Weinking to start off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to talk about the parking lot itself, because the ordinance isn't being followed here. Or there's a debate on whether the islands that you're saying, well, you're creating here is meeting the ordinance for the islands required in the ordinance. Could you go a little bit more into detail why that decision on your part is?
I assume you're referring to the requirement around 15% landscape space. Is that what?
Well, our ordinance says that when you have more than 15 spaces, you have to break it up with landscape islands.
Yes. So we are proposing landscape islands here and here. This is where there's proposed trees to be planted. Those islands are 2 parking spaces wide, or you could get 2 parking spaces within the area of those islands, as well as there's a large, mounded area here of landscaping, which again is elevated, kind of mounded, gives it some topographic relief. We've got the retaining walls on the back side of those. The other thing is we are trying to maintain as much vegetation as possible along the exterior boundary and keep the vegetation and existing wooded site close to the parking lot as possible, to maintain that wooded feel of the site. With given the layout of the parking lot, it serves as an access into the site with parking on either side of it. There's no, it's only a single tray of parking. There's no double stacking or 2 bays of it, which is where you can generally naturally create some landscaping. So that's just kind of not possible with the way this parking lot is laid out with the single bay. It doesn't orient itself that way. So what we've tried to do is provide these landscape islands here in place of that, which will also provide screening, a view blockage from someone entering the site. It's not able to see through the landscaping here to the far end of the parking lot due to the curved nature of the parking lot.
I guess I turn to staff then. What are your feelings based on that?
So I can speak to that. And we've spoken to the applicant about this. This was a concern that was brought up in the beginning. So on the plan south and the right side, you have about 25 spaces on both in a row. And so our ordinance, we would typically have 2 additional islands on that side and then at least 1 on the left side of the plan. And so when talking to the applicant, I understand also that there's a concern about parking and we want to make sure that we have enough parking. But they do have ample space that they could actually add some additional landscaping to the right where they have the lawn proposed, maybe as trees in lieu of a typical parking island. That could be some option that you might consider. That's really up to you, but I think that's probably the only, besides requiring the islands, there would be at least 3 additional islands required. You might look at requiring additional trees somewhere along the parking. It wouldn't achieve the same effect as the island to break it up, but it would give a little bit more landscaping, especially in that lawn area where there's no trees. And that's really the concern is that heat island effect and making sure there's some shade and some nice spaces created out there.
Well, I turn to the applicant then and say, I think before I get comfortable with that, I'd like to see if those, some of the alternatives that can be done on that work with staff. Because I don't necessarily like giving waivers for islands in a parking space because they're in our ordinance for a reason. And so I would ask that you work with staff and see if we can't negotiate a better solution than not addressing it. I like the building. I'm want to talk about that other building, the cooking. Can you tell me what's going on in that particular building?
Yes, so the building, that orange building that you see, this is this canopy structure. That's the orange that you see there on the site plan. So that this orange blob here, or rectangle, is this just post and beam structure. It's it's at the existing Allagash facility in Portland. They're relocating it to this facility, and it just is providing some covered seating for outdoor seating. So you can be outside when it's raining in the summertime and when it's nice and warm. Adjacent to that is going to be an accessory kitchen. And that's we're showing as a concrete pad right here in front of that roof canopy structure. So this is intended to be similar to like a food truck style where you'd walk up to an outdoor, it could be a building or like shipping container type structure with like a pop out window. There'd be the kitchen inside of it. You'd order from the window, walk back up to it to get your food. So it's kind of mirrored around their existing facility. They've got basically a full-time food truck on their facility now, and that's what their Allagash is looking to do at this site as well, to provide food to customers while the brewery tasting is open.
So where's the water waste and all that go? Is that staying, is this something like self-contained and then moved, or?
We are proposing water and sewer stubs to it. And there's a grease trap that is proposed underground. So we're treating it as a kind of as a kitchen that would have water and sewer use. It will probably be, it's all to-go orders. It'll probably be disposable utensils to beginning to start with, at least until operations could be configured in a better way. But so it's probably minimal, less use than a traditional restaurant with sit-down service. But they want to leave the option open to be able to have water and sewer and wash some dishes and prepare food in there with water.
Okay, thank you. I'm intrigued by the bathroom in this facility. Can you walk us through that? Because I don't think I've seen that.
Let me pull up the site plan or the plan set here real quick. Want to talk to that one?
Sure. You can even zoom in, I think.
It's different.
So questions about the bathroom. Effectively, what we have is a non-gendered unisex stall for every person who enters this space. It sort of serves two masters in a way. One is that this reduces the total square footage required that 2 gang bathrooms would require. It also allows for a lot of privacy. And it's a system that Portland campus has been using for a number of years. That's worked very well for them. So they really wanted to bring that across to the same system across to the new tasting room.
Interesting. Guess I had to go to the one in Portland.
You should.
Actually, I think we held an ASHRAE meeting there many years ago. But anyway, I do want to note that you have indicated future PV on here.
Yes.
And I'm sure that had some relation to why you positioned the building the way you did, which I commend you on that. And this is the first time I've seen architectural drawings where the mechanical systems are included with the screening so that we don't see it from the road. So thank you for doing that. I think at this point, I'll pass it on, Madam Chair, for others to make comments.
Thank you. Jen.
I will start by actually the first note that I wrote down when reviewing this plan, despite how it was presented tonight, which you reiterated. It's not entirely uncommon, but I feel like we don't often have too many applicants that come to the table and say it was really important to us to keep this a wooded site, to clear as little of it as possible for what we need to do. And beyond that, this is like an amenity to what we're doing. So I particularly for this lot, because you are adjacent to some pretty sensitive environmental areas, just a straight thank you to the applicant themselves and the team for not only doing that, but making sure that that was very clear to us, both in your presentation and in your materials, you know, big bubbled areas that say trees saved. I was like, wait, what are they doing? Cool. And I think that will, you know, I think that'll serve this project real well overall in the grand scheme of things. In a number of ways, so it's like, you know, aesthetically first off, and I think environmentally overall. So along that note, there was one thing actually I couldn't quite figure out. There's actually you can see it well here. To the top of the page, it looks like an existing clearing in the trees, but that it doesn't go anywhere. I'm not familiar with the lot to that level of detail, so I'm just curious if you could shed a little light on that.
Yes, there is probably a skidder trail or a tree clearing trail that was formed in that location. And this plan probably covers a little bit too much trees right through here because it does kind of continue this way a little bit. But if you look at the aerial images of it, there's a pretty good canopy over it now, but you are able to walk along this section of the old road that's in there now. So we wanted to kind of just indicate that, you know, it is there and there's a little bit of an opening there and try to just be as realistic as possible with the trees through that section.
Great. It's kind of what I was hoping you were going to say, but I wasn't sure. Maybe it's utility corridor or wetland stream or something. I wasn't sure. I think that's great. And a number of my comments are sort of intertwined, but you know, I know you kind of have a couple of call outs on this plan. Well, actually, first of all, going back to your presentation, you also spoke to the trail connectivity here as another amenity to the site. And on the one hand, I think that again, I think that's great. I would like to see the connection piece a little more clearly in the material. So like where are the trails going that you're connecting to, even if they fall outside of your particular property boundary and maybe outside of your exact purview, but that helps us to understand, you know, how this sits in with the adjacent lots or wetlands or whatever they may be. And then back to this informal trail, I'll call it, that we're talking about to the top of the page here. You know, I'll get to some traffic comments in a second, but I think the sort of the romantic idea of walking to this site by trail is kind of in line with the image, the you know, the experience that you're talking about, I think. And so if you have half a trail or an overgrown trail that's already there, I would love to see that called out as, you can, I know that there's sidewalk facilities and other pedestrian connections on Market Street itself, but wow, that would be really cool if you could sort of duck off of that at a point and arrive at this site. By that trail, you would be at the back of the building at that point, but I'll leave that challenge to your design team to overcome. But that's the kind of thing that I think does make this site really interesting. And then similarly, excuse me, to the south, there's notes that allude to another trail connection. And so again, just showing that where it is and maybe its width or how you actually plan to connect to that, I think would be really helpful. With regard to parking, so parking and the trip generation, I know our traffic peer reviewer just had some questions about the projected trips that are identified for this site. And I will just say that I know very well that these types of uses, breweries and tasting rooms in particular, are very hard to model because we don't have 50 years worth of trip generation data to look at, because it's sort of a newer combination of uses, right? It's a little industrial, it's a little, social, you have full-time day staff, but then you also have folks coming and going in the evenings. So no envy there for people that have to try and quantify that. But I will say that you obviously have the distinct advantage of having another facility not unlike this in Portland. And so in addition to looking at some of the other industry standards for trip generation, I think it'd be really helpful for us to continue the conversation about similar facilities that you've looked at, both for parking and for trip generation. And coming full circle, if you can encourage people to use this tremendous trail network to get here, I think that would be tremendous. And you're probably not going to take a huge credit for it in terms of your trip generation, but maybe something, maybe a little bit. And I think that would be great. It's either maybe it's above and beyond what you're planning for, or you can take a little bit of a credit there in terms of, what the Downs is looking at overall for trips and then obviously for impervious space for parking. So we had this conversation earlier about landscaped islands within the parking field. It's not lost on me that the total of, the area that Autumn was describing that would be needed to meet the interior island area for this parking field is exactly the same number of parking spaces that you are over our requirement for. I point that out with the recognition that there's also sort of you're obviously planning ahead for additional parking demand. And so, again, I don't know, we're just reading what you provide to us. And I think there's a much larger conversation not to be had at this time, but for this board and the town overall in terms of, comparing, taking a closer look at our local parking requirements, industry parking requirements, and how we really feel about impervious area. And again, that's not to put that on your shoulders, but just kind of for the benefit of everyone. That's always something that I'm looking at. Like, how much are we paving? You're saying that you need extra parking spaces, yet you're over our minimum. It's hard, and it's a challenge for every site, and every use is a little bit different, I think. So that's kind of a non-comment comment. The last thing that I have to say is just with regard to, there was another comment in one of the staff reviews about truck turning exhibits and truck movements, taking a right out of the site onto Market Street. And I will just add that it's my understanding that that route is not to be a truck route. So it doesn't really bother me that you didn't submit a turning movement for that. But I am curious if that was intentional. Or if you do see, maybe I don't want to project on you, maybe you do see truck turning movements taking that route. But either way, what is the plan for communicating to deliveries or truck drivers or large vehicles in general about the route that is desired to get here?
So on the delivery side, we did provide the truck turning movements using a WB50, which is an articulating truck, at the request of the consultant, the traffic reviewer.
But
that-
those were, sorry to interrupt, those were left out of the site toward Tigers Parkway, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The intended delivery is going to be more of a box truck style, so a slightly smaller truck. And the majority of the deliveries will come from Allagash, from their own facilities, and they can kind of control where those routes are going. The natural route to drive would be to go out towards Haggis and get on the interstate, would be the quickest route from their existing facilities in Portland. And so that will be the majority of the vehicle deliveries, but it wasn't necessarily intentional to, we just showed the left-hand turn out as that's the predominant direction for large vehicles to go towards the interstate. And we weren't trying to avoid showing the right-hand turn. It was just, you can't show everything. So we just showed the left hand, which is going to be the majority of the turns.
Sure. I think you are close enough to that intersection that it is pretty, hopefully it'll be logical. That's the easier way to get in. But, just curious if there's thoughts for, no trucks right turn or something like that. Because I do think that movement would be difficult if someone tried to do it in a larger vehicle. But I know that that's not the intent. So that's my final comment there.
Thank you. Roger?
I was actually going to ask about the same access point there on Market Street, but I guess that's been discussed. So I'll just go on to a few other things that hasn't really been talked about too much. The subsurface sand filter and the future parking. Now there will be no parking on that if it's approved the way it is now. Is that correct? They would have to come back before the board and the department to.
Usually what we ask is that if there is a plan for future parking, it be shown on the plan set with a sign that says, future parking. They're simply at this point saying it's future parking, but we're not seeing anything that would indicate. What they are showing that lot as is 1, meadow grass and snow storage, 2, the under drain soil filter, I believe, and 3, future parking. So they're planning on using that space for 3 different items, a couple of which are mutually exclusive.
Right, and as it stands right now, that they cannot use it for any kind of parking until it formally comes before us.
Unless they come to us with a specific request, then it is a meadow.
Okay. Just on a couple of other, just an observation, on the, that slab where you're gonna have the accessory kitchen, and you talked about a boxcar. I'm somewhat familiar with that because I saw that same setup down in Florida at a development somewhat similar to this. And the only thought I had when I looked at your arrangement here is I would recommend you consider moving it away from that canopy. Because the ones that I saw, they were kind of separated from the seating areas. And in other words, you didn't have everybody congregating right there by the food freight track, freight car, or whatever you want to call it, box car, and then right, infringing upon the canopy area. that's just a suggestion to think about on that thing there. The other thing that's in the staff comments regarding seating walls. And I like that. I like that concept because instead of having designated areas, you know, for seating, if you have like a wall, that opens up a whole array of opportunities for people to, you know, sit out there. So I like that. Regarding the parking lot and the landscaping, I would suggest you try and come up with some, even if you're in the future, you're gonna have to consider that meadow as a parking area. I would suggest you, I recommend you figure out how to put some trees right along the edge, because we've done that before. Instead of putting an island in the middle of the parking to satisfy the needs. Now, on the parking, it goes over, it continues north. How you're gonna, I imagine you're gonna have signs there saying no parking over in the north side, you know, the north side of the building, right? How are you gonna stop people from parking over there, right? Way over on the right, yeah,
Here
all the way down.
or along there?
Yeah.
Yes, we can add no parking signs if that's needed. I know that the fire chief was requesting that there be no parking signs added down here because of that was going to be the turnaround location if there were parking, if people were parking here, was his comment. There's kind of two turnaround areas that are available to turn around and pull out of. We've got an area here for deliveries that we're going to try and use as staff parking when deliveries aren't in session or timed for that area. And that allows vehicles to get past here. So we'd say that this was a couple of spaces that were planned for some employees if needed, if the parking lot were to fill up. We can add no parking signs to that right edge if the board thinks it's necessary.
Well, it just seems to me that if you don't have something there, if you don't intend people to park there, people will park there. They go there. I mean, they'll park anywhere they can. You know, so if there's no intentions of having any parking spaces along there, I would think you need some sort of signage.
Yeah, there is a curb along that edge for stormwater reasons. So that's somewhat of a deterrent from, you know, pulling off the edge. You'd have to be sitting in the whole drive aisle there to park along that edge.
Okay, and just to go back once again on the Market Street access there. So basically you have no intentions of any trucks, supplied vehicles or anything going in towards the marketplace. You're only gonna, basically, they're gonna be directed to head out towards the Parkway to leave there.
Yeah, unless the only thing I can think of is unless it's some sort of delivery that has multiple stops within the Downs development, that would need to go that way. The rest would be directed towards Haggis and to head south on Route 1 or north up to the interstate.
Okay. And my last question, on the signs, I understand the reasoning behind the signs. So, and you're gonna be using the signs that are currently in Portland. So does that mean the tasting room in Portland is gonna cease to exist? It's just gonna be a production facility?
No, it's kind of getting repurposed from what I understand. I don't know if there's definitive plans either way.
Okay.
And to jump back to some of your other questions, and on the accessory kitchen, the reason it's adjacent to that canopy structure is to allow food to be available easier during inclement weather. Get a little bit more rainy days than in Florida, and as well as cold weather too. At the facility in Portland, they have flaps that go down the sides of that canopy to block wind and provide heat when it's during colder weather.
All right, that makes sense.
And then one note of clarification, on this area down here, this is not proposed as a meadow. It's more of a lawn area due to what we're proposing to the board is that this area be allowed to be used as overflow parking, in case there's a busy day and parking fills up, as kind of a relief valve. It wouldn't be, planned parking or, full-time parking. It would just be on busy days or special events or something like that. So it'd be more of a lawn condition.
So then probably you should provide provide us with, parking spaces and what you anticipate could happen there. Another question just popped into my mind. What about like tour buses? And I mean, do you get tour buses? I would imagine you would have tour buses may stop there, and how are you going to accommodate those?
Yeah, so they do get limousines or small buses every once in a while with groups of people. And the direction they'll be given is to kind of leave the site and head to a larger parking lot like Cabela's or something like that.
I think that's all I have at the moment.
All right, thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the topic of the parking signs needed over there, speaking for myself as a case study, if I'm flying in with kids and I'm looking to meet friends that are there, if there's no sign, I'm definitely going to park there. It's a low cost ad, and just to add clarification on it, probably just be easiest and just put that question right to bed. I appreciate my colleague Jen's comments about wanting to see more of the trail connectivity. I think the presentation of how this is trying to organically fit into this area here is done very well. I'm really pleased with how this is shaping up, and very excited to potentially go here once it's all up. The few things that I have that I would like to see is the rendering earlier aside. I would like to see more just the deciduous, I'll say leaf falling trees on the site, just more shade trees in general. I was just out on the Shaw Trails in Gore with my family last weekend. And it was just absolutely beating hot. You're walking by, and as soon as you cross into the trees, it's just a wave of just coolness, relief, 5 to 10 degree temperature drop, depending where you are. And what concerns me about a lot of the downs is of just all of this impervious surface and clear cutting and I understand the definition of tree varies on its, size, its diameter, its height, but what's more important is just all the shade that's being lost and all the coolness that's in there. So potentially, if you're looking to develop that lower right-hand plan view corner into a parking lot eventually, maybe you have an idea of how many parking spaces you'd be able to put in there now. You have likely what that design would look like. Wouldn't hurt to put those trees in now. If you have planned ideas for potential shade trees in that area, just go ahead and put them in now rather than just having an open green space that on the hottest of days, not many people would probably go out there. They would probably seek the shelter of a tree that's much closer to the building if they're going to go and, enjoy a beer or another treat that's sort of at the facility here. So those are my comments about the trees. I'd like to see fewer of the evergreen coniferous style and just more of the deciduous style, the sort of shade trees. The other comment I have, this relates to lighting. I saw the cut sheet for the light fixture and the site plan application binder. There's one item I'd like to have changed on it. It's currently with a 70 CRI specification, 3K7 is in the model number. I think that should be 3K8. I'd like to see with an 80 CRI index. It just gives a slightly better quality of light, especially at nighttime. And that's kind of what we're moving towards town-wide for all of our exterior lighting. Otherwise, it's 3,000 Kelvin for the color temperature. I like to see that. Thank you. And this would also apply for not just the area lighting for the poles, but also for anything building mounted as well, a 3,000 color temperature with an 80 CRI. The last thing I would like to see, and I know this is more of a design item for when the building actually goes to a design construction document set, but I would like to have it noted on here and make sure that's accounted for when it gets to that point, is programmable dimming capability for all the lights, all the building exterior lights, and for the parking lot fixtures in the parking lot. I guess I'll preempt it by one question. Is this going to be a 24/7 facility? Is there going to be active brewing or anything going on in this site?
No, it's not a 24/7 facility. It's actually they're planning on very intermittent brewing. It's more for demonstrations and real specialty type things. So it's more about like once a week they'd be doing brewing.
Cool. It's more customer facing rather than
Yes.
meant to be production.
Yeah,
So-
not really a production facility.
Perfect. And that was the answer I was looking for. Thank you. My comment on this is that with all of the buildings that are going here, Costco, everything going on at the Downs, light pollution is a really significant concern personally of mine and for everybody else in town. If not noticeably now, they certainly notice it at night. And I would like to see the capabilities to have the fixtures dim by at least 50% during off hours of the facility. At night, the parking lot is vacant. There aren't any cars in the parking lot. So with a security camera system or police cars driving by, they'll be able to notice anybody who shouldn't be there with lower light levels in the evening. If there's nobody in the parking lot, they see a car there, they're going to investigate. So the capabilities for dimming your lights in the evening hours, say between 11 and 6 a.m. or daybreak or something like that, you can coordinate with the town on that. But would like to see that capability in here. And that's the last item that I have for right now. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. And Ben.
Most of my comments have already been addressed. Just note that I do agree along the lines of Rick's thinking regarding the parking spaces, all the continuous spaces. If we can find an alternative that, satisfies us, like I was mentioning, maybe with additional trees or something, I would be open to considering it. But I need to see some of that stuff. And then one other thing I just would mention that, aside from the walls, in terms of outdoor seating, on plans that I'd like to see kind of, if you have any more permanent seating that's outside, where that would be, how that would look as you get there. If you don't have anything else, it's just tables under the canopy or something that's different, but I'm not sure what else might be planned, and it'd be good to have it, visible.
In that regard, I don't know. There's not a plan yet, other than that there will be features and seating and some furniture out the front as well as on the side of the building. The only thing that there's a fire lane that goes through, so obviously that area will be clear and won't have seating in it or furniture in it. But yes, there are plans to have a front appearance and with features to it, not just walk right up to the building without anything there. So
Thanks. That's all I have at this time.
All right, thank you. We usually take a break around 8:30. I'm not going to actually call for a break because after this, we have only have one other application. So I suspect everybody would be happy if we just pushed on. Saying that, if anybody does need to take a break, please just stand up and do that. Let me just make a gentle stand up and leave the room and take a break. Never mind. Let's move on. I'm just going to give you a gentle, well-meaning reminder. And that is, I keep hearing you say they do it in Portland, and I just simply need to remind you that we're in Scarborough. And as such, we have different requirements. We have a different aesthetic. We have different ordinances. We have sometimes a different way of looking at things. We have a different population mix. So just keep that in mind. And while Portland may serve as a good sort of comparison to look at, we're in Scarborough. So for instance, I can't remember whether it was you or Roger who said it, but in terms of the accessory kitchen, I think somebody said, for instance, it could be like a freight car or a box car, or sort of arrangement, or some sort of a shipping container type. That would not meet our commercial design standards. So might meet Portland's, wouldn't meet ours. That kitchen that you're talking about, we don't see it on the plans. We would have to take a look at actually all of the designs and the specs on it, so that you need to come back to us with that. But before you do that and spend a lot of time on that, let me ask you a very basic question. Is that commercial kitchen, accessory kitchen, whatever you want to call it, is it fixed to the ground?
I guess the intention was to not have it fixed to the ground.
In that case, it would either be a trailer or a food truck, neither of which I believe are actually allowed in the Crossroads.
And the whole intention is to provide food service to the customers without installing a full commercial kitchen inside the building. However, that needs to get configured. Allagash is willing to work with the town, and very well aware that that just because they do it in Portland doesn't mean that it's going to be allowed here in Scarborough. So Allagash is very open to whatever the configuration needs to be to meet the ordinance and to meet the town standards. It's merely a matter of really trying to provide an additional service of having that food service to customers while they're at the site.
I think it's admirable. I think you need that. The first thing I did when I looked at the plans was say, where's the kitchen? And I had to dig through to find out that it was outside. I couldn't actually imagine a tasting room without food service. I would suggest that what you're building there, you've already talked about a grease trap, you've already talked about utilities out there, that basically what you're looking at is at a minimum an appropriate slab in a building that's actually a permanent building fixed there. Now, if you also would like to put a service counter area, walk-up area where people come and get their foods, that's fine. We have that in a lot of places in Scarborough. So that would accommodate the folks who are under that pavilion area. It would also take care of closing that off. It would also take care of ensuring the employees are warm in the winter if you're going to continue to use that building throughout the winter as a food service area. So a fixed area is fine. I would suggest that something that's movable probably does not address or meet any of our codes. So saying that, now let me move to another thing that raised my eyebrows, and that's already been brought up, and that's the bathroom. I'm old enough to say I don't like this. But I understand, I've been in unisex bathrooms and I understand it. I also have watched mothers driving themselves crazy trying to be in one of the stalls while their kids are there. I would like to see more of the schematics of this. Do the stalls go all the way to the ground and all the way to the ceiling, and there are fixed doors that can be locked and people can be in there? Or are people going to sit there and you're going to look and say, that's a pair of high heels, that's those are a pair of moccasins, and be able to see who's in every stall? So just please be sensitive to the fact that in Scarborough, we have a high elderly population, and I include myself in that category, who are probably going to look at that and say, I'm just going to go home. So I
will tell you that there are, in this plan, it's not labeled. There are two, one handicap access. These two are what they call, I forget what the name is. It's basically like a 1.5 times sized stall for those who may have a cane or something, not necessarily disabled. And then this room without features is a mother's room. So that is the locked door separate for mothers, so they don't have to be in a stall when they're doing what mothers do. And then this is a separate ADA bathroom as well. So we are trying to address those features.
just, please show me.
We
Please-
will.
please
We
show
get
it
to that
on the-
part of
on the plans.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me see, you answered the questions of stack screening. And let me see what else I have here. I have a couple of other things as I went along. Yeah, the parking area, the overflow parking, what you're doing is giving people, as I've said in the past and other places, you're giving them a hunting license. And they can hunt and try and find a place to park. And if what you're saying is that's going to be overflow, then people are going to come down that dead end area and they're going to park however they want. And it's going to be messy if they're parking on the grass. I would suggest that that is not the place for overflow parking unless you're willing to make it into a regular parking space. And in which case, then you have to show us where you're putting the snow. Because this is for snow and it's for it's for stormwater. You have a tree save area kind of in the island area in between the tasting room and the driveway to the rear. There's something is listed as tree save. I think it's very good that you're doing that. I would actually like to know what you're saving. So is what's in there worth saving, or is it worth creating a brand new area, a brand new treed area? If what you're saving is scrub, well, that's kind of nice, but that's not helping with the heat sink. It's not providing overhead screening. So take a look at what's there and decide how to make the most of that area. The next thing is you're lucky you're here before us now, because ultimately coming before the ordinance committee and the council are changes in the ordinance in terms of, or at least more specificity in terms of what the islands would look like in the parking lot. We need more islands in there. And you could work with Eric and or Autumn to take a look at what's coming up, and it might give you some ideas as to what would be appropriate to put into those islands. It might be helpful to you. But right now, those islands are required unless you can show us where you are otherwise creating the shade that would prevent a heat sink from forming in those areas. Now, I'm also looking at the lighting, and it appears as though the lighting is actually, some of the light poles are in the parking spaces. I'd be happy to be told that they aren't, but that's the way I read this, which means that sooner or later somebody's going to hit them. If I have anything else, I like the idea of putting more screening in the front along the road. I can't remember now where I've got the landscape, but you do have some screening there. We always look for something that matches the word robust. And we'll know it when we see it, which is not good help to you, but I understand that you have plans to put some more landscaping in there, and that's very helpful. I'm with Jen on that skid area, which extended could actually reconnect with the sidewalk if that's something that Allagash is interested in doing. It does provide another shade area, provides a place for people to walk, would be, I think, beneficial. As you start to look at more on this, the building and the architecture, we do look for benches highlighting the entrance. So take a look at how you would treat the entrance in terms of seating, actually something permanent rather than moving out for the summer, moving out some tables or something for the summer. So I think with that, I may have taken care of all of my notes. I probably have. So I appreciate the work you're doing. I notice Mr. Beely is raising his hand. I bet I can guess. Go ahead, Roger.
I'm just kind of curious, on the unisex bathrooms, do you see that being presented more often? Is that something that we're going to be facing?
Yeah, you'll be seeing more of that. But the plumbing engineer is telling me that it's going to be in upcoming codes. So it's a thing on the horizon for all of us.
The reason I asked that is because I'm pretty sure that one of the newer hotels in Portland, right on Commercial Street.
In Portland?
In Portland. And
Not in Scarborough? In Portland? Go ahead.
And I happened to be in it in the lounge when it first opened, and it was amusing watching people our age going in and walking immediately out. So, I was just kind of curious. That's probably something we should have to look at then.
There are unisex bathroom. There's a unisex bathroom at Broadturn Farm. It's small, but it's there. So if you want to, go out and take a look at what they've done with it, but it's nowhere near as large as this. And it does create an assurance of privacy, which I think is something that's to me would be important, especially where a lot of alcohol is consumed. Absolutely. Do you have any other questions? Anything we're not clear with? Anything that you're ready to move forward on? Or question or confused?
Just a couple of points that to try to answer some of your questions that you had brought up. On the tree save over here, we did actually go out and mark the building corners as well as the tree save, this tree save and some of the ones up here, just to get a better sense as to what the trees are out there. And there are some, particularly in the northern part of the site, north and east part of the site, there are significant trees that are, multiple of 10 feet tall, we'll say 30, 40 feet tall. As you move kind of to the south and west into the wetland area, that's where they become smaller and more sparse. But that's why we did choose to have the tree save in that location, because there were trees of good density and high quality there.
Very good. I suggest when you resubmit that you put that into your application to explain, so that we know what's there. I think that's very helpful. Thank you.
And then on the snow storage, if I can get to it here. On the site plan area, or on the site plan itself, we're delineating areas in this dashed line of snow storage. And so we're showing snow storage kind of at certain intersections around the corners and the radius here. This area along the edge of the parking lot out here by the beginning. This wasn't really ever intended to be a huge snow dump from the whole facility. And we don't really want the mound of snow on top of the subsurface sand filter. There is some, this is where the subsurface sand filter is going. So there's a little bit more area here that could be used for snow storage, but it's not that area really isn't intended to be this, big, large snow dump area. So in terms of in the future, that's any sort of future parking that wouldn't be taken up by that use.
Okay, I think you need to certainly show that on the plans, but I suggest from the plans in front of us, the distance between the tree line, including the wetlands area and the parking lot the parking spaces is not terribly, doesn't look terribly wide, and to just plow up snow into that area means that you're going to be plowing snow up into the trees. So just show us that that's not happening. Show us that you actually have that space. Now, granted, as we go on, we may be seeing less and less snow, but this is Maine, so we're going to have a few good ones. What a lot of other businesses are doing is simply saying over a certain amount of snow, snowfall, and it will be trucked off, rather than trying to make do with some space that's not particularly adequate. So take a hard look at that, please.
And then one last point of clarification is on the parking spaces the light poles. The light pole itself, this is the symbol for the light pole. The pole would be located here, or in this case down here with the light fixture kind of hanging out over. So the circle on the light pole symbol is the proposed location for the base. So they won't be located within the parking.
Thank you. I appreciate the
itself.
correction. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Thank you. Appreciate the work that you've done here, and this is an exciting plan. I live half a mile away, so I really want you to come. And I can get home if I need to use the facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item in the agenda, item 4.05, Keeper Scarborough LLC requests sketch plan review of a parking expansion at Maine Veterinary Medical Center. The expansion would include 67 parking spaces south of the existing veterinary practice, as well as walkways, lighting, and landscaping. The property is further identified as 1500 Technology Way, Assessors Map U39, lots 4731 and 4732. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Maine Vet's currently in front of the board with a sketch plan to expand their parking at the existing facility on Technology Way. It would be on 2 adjacent lots next to the existing business and connect to the recently paved 19-space parking lot at that southern end. Maine Vet's indicated that through the loss of a lease for 20 additional spaces further down Technology Way, as well as the regular occurrence of on-street parking and illegal parking on the site, this expansion is warranted. Staff's included in comment some requirements for EV conduit, as well as parking lot landscaping and public safety items for inclusion in the formal site plan submittal moving forward. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and I will turn it over to the applicant.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Aaron Hunter. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics. Here tonight presenting on behalf of the applicant, Keeper Scarborough LLC. Also here with me tonight is Jacob Strong from Rare Breed Veterinary Partners. And then also online, we have a representative from Keeper Scarborough, who's the landowner. So we met with staff back in July for a pre-application meeting. and they suggested that we come here to present a sketch plan application to get preliminary feedback from you all. So what they're planning to do is an expansion of the existing veterinary medical center located at 1500 Technology Way. To give a little bit of an overview of the existing site, it's located along Technology Way, which is a part of the Enterprise Business Park, which is a subdivision that was approved by the town in 2003. It also received DEP approvals and Army Corps approvals. The site last received approval in 2020 for the construction of a patient drop-off and pickup driveway and some additional parking. I'll show it here on the screen. So you have the parking area right here. That added 24 parking spaces, and then the existing facility has 74 parking spaces. So in total, the site currently has 98 spaces. So since then, the applicant has purchased a couple of lots, one over here to the left of the parking expansion, and then one over here to the top of the page, adjacent to the existing facility. They've chosen to expand parking onto the left of the existing parking area to stay away from this lot over here where there's the stream protection area and some steeper slopes. So they've decided to go with that area. Really, the lack of parking area.
Yeah, we can't see it.
It came up.
Do we need to be in the Zoom and the share screen, or does it come up with HDMI?
Either you were sharing.
Yeah, I thought it.
Bingo.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so as I was saying, the proposed parking is over here to the left of the existing parking that was added in 2020, which was in addition to the parking that was provided for the existing facility. So the reason for the parking is just based on needs of the facility. They've seen cars parked along spots that are not spaces in the parking areas, along the cul-de-sac.
Avert your eyes, please, on the cul-de-sac.
And also their leasing area from 700 Technology Way for parking spaces. So when you add up all those parking spaces, they're in need of anywhere from about probably around 60 parking spaces additional. So this parking expansion is proposed to add 67, but when you take into account the spaces lost from the connection to the existing parking area over here, you'll be adding 62 total. Access to the parking area will be proposed adjacent to the driveway that serves the Mint Salon Block business over across the street. And then we'll be connecting to the existing parking area. We'll be adding landscaping as a part of the project along the street. There is an existing sidewalk that runs along the street. There's a ditch that separates that from the street. So we'll be planning to connect into that and also to provide access to the existing walkway that goes towards the front of the building. For utilities, we'll be proposing light poles, which we don't show right now. So we will be working with a lighting consultant to get that designed and to meet the requirements of the ordinance. We also are aware that there will be some EV ready and EV capable spaces that it will be required to be planned for. So we'll be looking to provide the necessary conduit and electrical capacity for those spaces as needed. So we'd either be probably, there's two potential options that we're looking at. One would be utilizing any existing capacity in the transformer that's located here at the left corner of the building. Or we'd be providing a new service off of one of the poles within Technology Way to just serve the parking lot and the EV spaces. In regards to stormwater, there is an existing DEP site location permit for the whole development. There's a pond located further down here off the left of the page. Basically, all the stormwater from this area of the subdivision is collected in the ditch along the road and flows to the pond where it's treated and detained. We did speak with DEP and they're not going to require any additional permitting, which is a little bit different than what we had originally thought in our sketch plan application that we had submitted. So as long as we're within the impervious thresholds that they allow as a part of the permit, there's no additional permitting, which we're planning to stay within. In regards to traffic, there's no building expansion. So we're really just accounting for existing traffic needs to provide safer circulation and room for emergency vehicles and winter plowing operations. So we'll submit a memo as a part of the site plan submittal, discussing the different traffic components. And that's pretty much all that I had right now. Just looking to hear any feedback that you might have as we work towards site plan submittal, planning to get there for the end of the month. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This item is available for public comment. Is there any member of the public in the room or online who would care to comment? Do we have anybody online? We do not. All right. Public comment is closed. I'll just turn this over to the board in general. Remember, this is a sketch plan, so please provide your best thinking to the folks about how to proceed in some of these areas. Jen?
I thank you for the photos that were provided and in sort of showing what's happening on site, cul-de-sac and all. And for explaining that this is one of the questions I had written down was, is this expansion or is this really just meeting current demand? And it sounds like it's really just meeting current demand. But I am just curious. I very much remember, I think this project was one of the first ones that we saw virtually after COVID. And I remember folks from this business explaining that they had seen a dramatic uptick in their business that was resulting in a greater need for parking, and particularly for this then led to the 24 space parking expansion and the drive-through operation. And so I'm curious, is that still in operation such that people are coming here and driving through, but then staying and parking? I'm just trying to understand how, I mean, it's a good thing for this business, but I'm curious how a business has expanded in its use so much to require so much additional parking without expanding the building. So this means like the operations have done what? Or we just all have more pets?
Yeah, I guess I would ask Jacob maybe to expand a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you. Very good question. So for the drive-through aspect of your question, so essentially it's not, not like a drive-through, nobody's getting service or prescriptions, as they drive through. So essentially just that culvert to drive through and then go to a, basically a parking spot. It's numbered. Okay. I'm going to call and say, hey, I'm in parking spot number 1, and it's accessed either through that drive-through or via the main entrance. I think you kind of see highlighted in this kind of purple area here. So I can't tell you exactly how many of those spaces we have marked for basically lot visits versus something that would be, typically pre-COVID, you would go into, into the office, meet with the veterinarian, hear the diagnosis, but a lot of it has been car side. We're trying to get back a little bit less car side and more kind of, people facing. So more people will be actually in the facility itself rather than parked in a spot for a couple minutes, get the diagnosis, potentially stay in that spot or drive home. So kind of into the uptick of the business, they're doing a lot with more with the same amount of space. Our company, Rare Breed, has been talking about a potential building expansion. We've been tabling that for a little while. We had always said phase 0 is going to be parking expansion because we'd lose a majority of the existing parking spots via construction expansion. So that's why we kind of decoupled that and said this is going to be the first phase of phase 0 for anything that we would do subsequently. And that I don't know if it'd be helpful to call that out as a potential expansion. However, it's always just potential and hypothetical at this point. But there are, longer term aspirations to expand the building as well. And then obviously we lose parking spots via construction and then potentially anyway, we'd move on that lot 30 where the building currently is.
Do you still need that drive-through area?
I can't really speak to the details of exactly what the purposes were. I know it's used for a lot of deliveries and kind of quick drop-offs. I do they have a couple other loading areas on the far side of the building, but I can't speak to exactly what that's used for day to day.
Sure. I asked it's not incredibly ideal, but it is already impervious area. And I don't know if there's maybe it could be parallel parking spaces or something like that. But operationally, I'm not, sounds like so maybe that's something that could be thought about, if you could fit 5 or 8 or whatever, however many more spaces there, and potentially limit the new construction. Just a thought. Other questions that I had. I thought it was interesting. Okay, so another thing that I remember from the last application in 2020 was someone said, so this is a 24-hour facility, correct?
Correct.
And I remember someone saying that they were seeing a lot more business in like off hours. So previously, pre-COVID, you don't really have a lot of customers coming at 2:30 in the morning. But that they were starting to see sort of peak times expand beyond what we might think of as traditional business hours. And so I'm curious if that's still happening. And then curious why the desire to not share parking anymore. So part of your lot expansion here, you explained was to sort of eliminate the need for leasing spaces at a facility next door. I can't remember exactly what all of those uses are, but my sense is that this is the only 24-hour facility. And so I'm curious if there is a demand for sort of off hours, why the decision to build out additional parking spaces versus stick with a leased option for parking spaces that already exist.
The leased option ends, I want to say, in the beginning of October. So
Lease terms.
yeah, lease terms.
Okay. Okay.
And a little bit towards the change in peak time. So I can't speak to exactly, we do have some data around what our peak times and number of clients coming through and things of that nature. During a changeover of a peak time, we could have over 120 employees, the vehicles parked there. I can't tell you exactly how many times that happens per day, per week, what have you, but on a peak time, as you said, it is getting all the more busy over the last couple of years. 120 vehicles for just staff alone in the existing lot. Thus, it looks a little bit unruly at times.
How big is the building? Do you know how many square feet?
Off the top of my head, I could look that up, but I don't know off the top.
It doesn't
I think it's about
Just
close
curious.
to 17,000 square feet.
Okay,
I'd say that's close, yeah.
that's all I have.
Also to kind of add, we did, when we went before staff, I would say that we had the parking going to the full extent of the left of the lot. So we did try to size that down to be more appropriate, and really to only build it out to where we think we need it at this point, which happens to line up with that driveway connection, which works very well. So we'll say that we did try to try to think about that a little bit.
Anybody else?
Madam Chair.
Ben?
So for your information, I work in the nearby area, so I'm aware of the parking issues, see them all the time. One thing that I'll note, when people are walking, I know this is sort of outside your property line, but along Scarborough Downs Road, I feel like with the expansion of the parking lots they've had in recent times, and also with all the Downs stuff, the tree lines have become very sparse along that road. And so, you know, with adding a parking lot here too, I would really like to see screening or enough trees between, and I know, looking at the property lines, I'd see that a lot of that is actually not even your property, but if we could get a way to make it not just like a parking lot, I guess, across the street from these apartment buildings and what have you at the what a grist mill area and all that. It's already sparse. I would encourage you to think about just the general visibility of how it all looks as you're going down Scarborough Downs Road. Just seeing a bunch of parking lots across, you know, the road is not everyone's favorite thing to see. I understand the need for parking. It's kind of my comment.
Yep, no, thank you. Yeah, I did take a walk out there, and I know what you're saying over at the recently constructed parking expansion. I will say that for this one, we are planning to hold it a little bit further off of the property line. I think right here we showed 20 feet, but when we actually drew it in CAD, it resulted in greater than 20 feet that we could fit there along that property line. So we'll be able to save some of the existing trees there, which will be good. But yeah, we will definitely take that into consideration. Thank you.
Jim?
I would say to follow up on Ben's comment, that would be the use of, we'd want more evergreens, coniferous trees here, not deciduous or shade trees. Want something a little bit more firm, full, if we do consider put something on that back wall just for barrier.
Thank you. Roger?
Did you consider reconfiguring the employee lot to blend it in more with the new proposed lot? Because if I recall, the employee, that lot was more or less a temporary when it was first proposed.
Yeah, so it was approved temporary as gravel with the condition that it had to be paved by sometime in 2022, I think, or around then, and it has been paved. So right now we're planning to connect to that. There is a drainage swale that goes along there, so it would result in some regrading and redesign of stormwater. So basically from a cost standpoint, it seems more effective to try to keep it the way that we were going.
Okay. I just thought from an aesthetic point of view, it would look nicer if it was all configured with nice landscaping and uniform parking and everything, you know?
Yeah, we are proposing some trees in between there as well. So it will have some landscaping that carries across. So we think that'll be a good addition.
That could possibly enable you, you know, where down below where you have in the square box 11 and 9, you know, parking spots, it would possibly allow you to push, you know, open that space up more for landscaping. If you were to fill in, you know, make that more uniform, but just something to think about.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is that the cars in that area are parked in a different direction. So yeah, it would essentially take redoing that whole parking lot probably to make it work. But we appreciate the input, and we'll think about that.
All right, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. As I look at this, I recall when you folks came before us to put in the temporary parking lot. What are you gonna do with the entranceway to that original employee parking lot? You're gonna close it off? Right now, you've got looks as though you're proposing 3 exits onto the same road, which we don't like. a matter of fact, the ordinances call for only one exit.
So I guess I would just say that those are three separate lots. As it was approved, we are, it is under one ownership. I'm not sure if there are plans to close off that one, to access to the employee lot. It is a one-way only entrance. So that does help a little bit. We were proposing for the new connection to be two-way with an entrance and an exit.
So I recall when we discussed that a couple of years ago, one of the issues that we were concerned about was actually the location of that employee entrance, because people would be unclear whether they were supposed to go around the roundabout, the cul-de-sac there, or whether they could turn left, creating a potential traffic problem. I think also we may have done a waiver, which somebody would have to look it up, because the entrance to that parking lot was under the required distance from the entrance to the main building lot, the entrance of the main building. And while there could be a waiver for that, I personally think that three entrances, curb cuts are too much. I think you could get away just fine with the two, closing off the middle one. So please consider that, and I'm going to ask the staff to take a look at the original approval and some of the discussion around it, around the way that curb cut was done. Let me see what else I had. Yeah, I noticed that what you had indicated, and I'm reading the staff memo, there was 16,768 square feet, which would have led to 68 spaces based upon the parking required by Scarborough, and you're proposing 160 spaces, which to me, I'm not sure that you have yet made a burden of proof for exactly why you need that many more. And I do understand that the cars are parking around the cul-de-sac. I believe even after you put in this new parking lot, there will still be cars parking around the cul-de-sac because, well, it's easy. And people will go for the easy way. I can just park here. I can run in the building. I don't have to go in here. I don't have to find a parking space. So you're going to see the same problem around the cul-de-sac. I like Jim's idea about really taking a hard look at and ensuring that there's some more buffering along the Downs Road, understanding that your property only goes so far, but anything that can be done to provide additional screening there would be helpful. And I think that's all I had. I think everybody else commented on what we needed. Do you think you feel as though you've got enough direction from us to move forward?
I think so. Yeah, looking at the parking and the configuration of the entrances, we'll work with staff to get some additional feedback and clarification. But I think we have some good stuff to look into and try to incorporate into our next submittal.
Yeah, and when you show us the next submittal, I realize you've just kind of superimposed the new parking lot over on top of what's there. But by doing that, you've obscured the old parking lot. So if we could see how one flows into the other just a little better, it's just some clarification there. And therefore, which which spaces would be eliminated. I think you said 5 spaces.
Yeah, so it's about that. So yeah, we certainly will provide a
just-
more thorough plan set. This was kind of just to get the initial concept across to get your initial feedback. So we'll be providing a full plan set that details all that out.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, if you have no more questions,
We're all set.
very good. We'll see you back here shortly.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Staff report.
Very minimal tonight, just noting that the next meeting is August 28th. That's all we have.
And we do not have a workshop.
Nope, not at this time.
Okay. All right. 5.01 minor development reviews.
None at this time.
5.02 administrative amendment report.
So we do have one, as the board might recall, Mercedes-Benz at 137 Route 1, sort of in the northern part of Route 1 in town, got approval for some building additions. In order to relocate the staff from those additions, they are bringing in a couple of trailers, which I think typically would be used for construction offices, but in this case, they're actually being used to temporarily house the employees. Yeah, they are there. So we have that application and we're currently working with the fire department to make sure that they have what they need. So that's something that's currently under review.
Thank you. 6.01 correspondence.
Not at this time.
6.02 planning board comments. Roger?
Yeah, Eric, it seems like we've approved quite a few projects in recent weeks, but I haven't been signing many plans. Is there some reason why? I know that you get something over there now. but-
Yeah, I did forget to mention, we do have the town center subdivision plans for signature. I think the nature of that is just, we've had the innovation district subdivision amended, town center came through. There was Higas, so there have been 2 or 3 that have come through, but I mean, since I've been here late 2021, we honestly haven't had that many subdivision approvals. It's mostly been site plans and,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
And then just the other, one other thought. I know we have our guidelines and everything, but new things do happen. And I think we saw tonight an example of that with the unisex bathrooms, restrooms, as well as these boxcar facilities. And I think we should at least give some consideration to these trends that may be happening. So we can, in anticipation that we may be presented with these.
Food trucks is definitely on our list of ordinances to consider. As far as internal bathrooms and configuration, I'm not really sure how much authority this board has on those requirements. I think it's definitely something you can comment on and ask questions, but I don't think that's in your authority to talk about how the restrooms are. I mean, I can definitely check into it more for you, but
That's more building code
it's more
stuff.
building code, and as long as they meet plumbing code, and it's an interesting thing to talk about, but I don't think we can say you can't.
Okay, so basically, we don't really have an opinion on it. If they present it and it meets all the codes, then it's fine.
For inside the building, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm fine
Well,
with that.
let me say, we may have an
You can have
opinion
an
on
opinion.
it, but we can't, we can't necessarily do anything. Right. But what we can do is advise them with a reminder, the demographics here are a little different than they are in perhaps in Portland. Or there may be something that we know that somebody from outside of Scarborough might not know about what works and what doesn't work. And it's a case of providing some advice, which they are free to ignore. But they might want to really think about it, because we do know the town in a way that somebody who's used to building in different towns doesn't. And we can say, please don't do that. But if the codes say they can do it. And if it works for them, that's fine, or it may not work for them. And maybe next time somebody will listen.
Well, I think it's fine as long as it meets the building codes, but I think it's important not to imply to the applicant that I don't like that, so you might want to change that, I think we gotta be careful about what we say. So that's the only point I was trying to make.
And the point I was trying to make, one point I was trying to make is if privacy is an issue, please show us how you're handling privacy. Show it to us. There's nothing we can do about it. But that does force them at least to think about it, about how they would develop the bathroom, how they would use it, how they might consider, well, they've already talked about a mother's room. That's great. That's good to have. Good to know that they're doing that. We can feel free to give our opinion. And if it's not involved in any ordinances, well, it's just our opinion. Something they can decide to ignore or go forward with. Any other comments? Motion to adjourn? Do I hear one?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take Roger as a motion to adjourn and Rick as a second. All in favor, just kind of wave your hands a lot. Thank you very much. We will see you in a couple of weeks.